Welcome all my fellow Washington brethren and sistren. I am your man in Washington, football fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Washington Football Report. So tonight's going to be a big show, and I apologize for the 30-minute delay. They snuck some Ron Rivera pressers. Really, they snuck all of their pressers in on me. Didn't really notice. I was just trying to catch Rivera talking to the media today. They also had JDR talking to the media. I didn't even get to finish his, so I'll probably do a separate video talking about what JDR had to say, Jack Del Rio, the defensive coordinator. Also, they talked to the place kicker, Dustin Hopkins. Look, I want to get all the info, all the content that I can from these players. So I don't care if it's a 5-minute clip or if it's a 7-minute interview or a 3-minute interview or a 4-minute mic'd up segment. I want all of it. So I'll probably do a video at some point this weekend kind of talking about what Jack Del Rio, if anything interesting was said or anything that I could gain further from that, maybe you can gain something. We'll talk about those things a little bit later on down the line. But I did want to get at least what Coach Rivera had to say under my belt and kind of digest that so we could at least talk about that during the players and coach speak segment. It really won't be a lot of players speaking. It'll be more about what Rivera had to say, because really what Rivera is talking about is the things that we really need to be focused on, and how I kind of put together my 53-man roster was really based off of what I gathered from Rivera talking this entire camp. So a lot of what I've done with my 53-man roster is kind of based off of Rivera's words. And then, you sprinkle in a couple of what the beat reporters are saying and some of the people that have been around the team every day. You kind of take that into consideration. But the meat and potatoes of what I based my 53-man roster projections off of is what Ron has said to us, and also me just knowing how these things work and how unique this situation is. It's going to kind of change the way, if you're smart, I don't know how they're going to approach this. I think Kyle Smith is extremely sharp. I don't know about you guys. I am really loving Kyle Smith as a guy being in control of this roster. He, to me, gets it. You can tell he's a guy that's been around football his entire life. He's a junkie. His dad was a GM, and he seemed to have gotten this thing down packed. He's a smart guy. He's sharp. He gets it. And I feel really confident and comfortable with him pulling the strings when it comes to this roster and him running things by Ron Rivera. So this is a really good setup that we've got. One of the better ones we've had here in Washington. You should be excited. As a fan, I'm going to be honest with you. As a fan, I haven't been this excited about the entire organization as a whole in a long time. It's been a very, very long time. I wasn't this excited about the organization as a whole back in 05 when Joe Gibbs came back. Back in 04, I should say, when Joe Gibbs came back. I wasn't even this excited about the organization as a whole because Vinny Serrato was still around. They were still doing stupid things like spending money very frivolously. They had no idea how to use free agency. It was a mess still in Washington. The only guy that you felt good about that made you feel like we had a shot was Joe Gibbs. It's totally different now. This thing from top to bottom, minus Dan Snyder at the very, very top, which is a problem in itself, but this thing, after you cut off Snyder from the top and you go from, Jason Wright to Ron Rivera, who are pretty much at the top of the food chain after Snyder, once you get to those two and you bring your way down, you work your way down and you feel really confident at each level that you're looking at. And that's why I feel like this thing is heading in the right direction. Now we just got to hope and pray that, Rivera gets healthy and everything goes well with his situation with the cancer, and then we just gotta hope that he gets enough time and hope that these players that they've picked and these guys that they've signed and all of these guys that they've brought on this roster and that they picked the right 53, and I think they're going to make some really good decisions. They're gonna have some tough decisions on the back end of the roster. We'll talk about that tonight, but at the end of the day, you just hope that they get the right guys, they keep the right guys in free agency when contracts are up, they figure this thing out, and Rivera is allowed to do what he was brought here to do, which is turn this organization around. I just feel really good about it. I don't know about you, but I just felt the need to say that to start the show off because of all of the things that I've been hearing. I watched Kyle Smith talk. He had an interview with Julie Donaldson about 3 or 4 days ago, and I just love this guy. Kyle Smith gets it. He's just sharp as a tack and he gets it, man. And when you listen to him talk ball, I just feel like we got the right guy, and he's young, and so he understands all of the things that are going on right now. He's young enough that he's not out of the loop, but he's old enough and he's been around the game long enough that he understands the lingo and how to work and interact with some of the veterans around the league. So you're not going to fleece this guy in a deal. Like, I felt like we got good value in that trade with Las Vegas for David Sharp, to just switch to flip-flop and essentially give them your sixth, get a seventh in return, and a player that you potentially could like that could be here long-term. You feel good about that. They felt a way about David Sharp, which is why they decided to move on from him. They had had enough of David Sharp, and that's fine. We've said this before. One guy may not fit in a particular scheme, or he may not fit with the coaching staff. He may come somewhere else, and he may flourish. That could be him here, and so they could eventually have unearthed a gem in David Sharp. And I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think he's going to be a solid backup, but you need solid backups on your football team. And to be able to get one for a 6th-round pick, just think about it that way. You're spending essentially a 6th-round pick on a guy. Generally, 6th-round picks don't help you from a roster standpoint. You're seeing it more and more now than you used to in the past. But 6th-round picks are a crapshoot. You're rolling the dice and you're hoping it comes up nice, but there's no guarantees in the 6th round. This is a guy that is a veteran in the league, and you feel good about them having some kind of working knowledge of him. Rivera talked about reports that were written about him, and in the film kind of matching up. We'll talk about that a little bit later on when we get to Rivera's coach speak a little bit later on in the show. But I just really like the deal that they got for David Sharp, and I just really like Kyle Smith. Listening to him the entire offseason, when the Trent situation was going on, when we were talking about the draft, when you could see him getting a little bit more power over the draft now that Bruce and company weren't here any longer and there was no one really holding him back. You could hear this guy really taking control of the draft and all of the things that Rivera had given him the power to do. And you could just see a guy that was really starting to really get comfortable in his skin as a guy that could potentially be a GM in this league. And I think he's going to eventually be that for this football team. I'm really excited. I can't say, I can't talk for you guys and speak for you out there. I just know I'm really excited, and I'm really excited about tonight's show. First and foremost, because I'm generally not this excited about 53-man rosters. Because again, as I've said before, usually you feel really comfortable mapping out a 53-man roster. You feel really confident about, normally for me, I feel usually confident about 48 out of the 53, maybe even 50 some years. There were years where I felt really confident about 50 out of the 53 guys, and there aren't really that many spots available on the roster. This year, we have absolutely no idea at certain positions. I think there are about at least 8 to 10 roster spots that we aren't quite sure about. Now, when it all is said and done and you look at the final roster, I think we'll feel really confident about 45, right around 45 or, maybe 47 guys that make the team. We'll be like, okay, yeah, we thought he was going to make the football team. But there could be some surprises on the back end of the roster. And I know some of you haven't been following camp as close, and I get that. But some of these guys that you just assume were going to make the football team, not so fast, my friends. Okay, it's going to be really interesting. I can't wait to get to the 53-man roster later on in the show. And I do have a curveball for you guys there as well. And it's not just a curveball for the sake of throwing a curveball, just to be different from everybody else. That's not what I aim to do. If I think it's what everybody else is saying, I'm just going to go with what everybody else is saying. I'm not one of those guys that just tries to be different for the sake of being different. I actually think this guy could make the football team, and it wouldn't shock me if he did. We will see. But nonetheless, let's get to tonight's show. And I just want to start out by saying thank you guys for joining me tonight, and look forward to chopping it up with you guys next week. Remember, this is the last Washington football report of the offseason. We will then transition into the Washington Football Nightly program, formerly known as Redskins Nightly News, okay? Had to rebrand that as well. So we'll be transitioning into that next week, as next week marks the start of the season. So be on the lookout for that as well. So this is the last time we will be doing this, but we will have a live program every single week. I'm thinking that live show is going to be on Wednesday nights. So stay tuned for that as well. But in any event, let's get to the show tonight. I want to get to your super chats and comments, and then we will start working our way through all of the content we have. I do want to say this before we get into any of the comments. Obviously, talked about Dwayne Haskins being named the starter. I thought that was something that needed to be done. Rivera talked about that. I'll talk about it a little bit later on as to what he actually said about that process that they went through and all of the decision making that went into that decision. But that was something that needed to be done. We knew that was going to be the decision. It really wasn't a true competition this camp. Dwayne had taken the vast majority of the first team reps. There was really no doubt that he was going to be the guy. It was just up to Ron to announce that. I'm really excited for Dwayne Haskins, as are most of you. We've been doing this all offseason. We've been talking about Dwayne. We've watched him really take ownership of this role. And I thought he took on the challenge that was issued by Rivera during that Happy Thanksgiving presser where he was introduced as the new coach of this organization. And he pretty much laid down the gauntlet and said, hey, Dwayne Haskins, if he wants to be the starting quarterback of this football team, he's going to have to put in the work. He's going to have to show the leadership skills. He's going to have to prove to us that he is the guy. And I thought Dwayne took that challenge and he ran with it and he never looked back, got into tremendous shape. He's been a guy that's worked extremely hard, has gotten a good grasp of the playbook. We heard Scott Turner talk about how this guy has picked up the playbook very well and seems to know all of the things that they've asked of him to this point and then some. So he's right there where he needs to be in terms of his playbook. He's a guy that has started to play a lot faster. Rivera talked about that. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. There are, all of these things. He's in early. He's out late. He's showing the leadership qualities that they've asked him to do. And so I think Dwayne, even though he wasn't able to necessarily go out and show it in a live game to this staff during the preseason, I think he's shown them that he's ready for this responsibility of being an NFL starting quarterback. And I think he's the right man for the job. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him shred this league because I think a lot of people counted this guy out for whatever reason. And I hope that they didn't think that the Dwayne Haskins that they saw versus the Giants in his first ever action in the NFL, or even versus the Vikings later on in the season where he was ill prepared, wasn't the guy that we were going to get long term. He showed us just a little tidbit of what was to come, we're hoping, in the final 4 quarters that he played in, or really 6 quarters, that final game versus the Eagles that he played, and in the first 2 quarters against the Giants, he was magnificent. And I think that's what we're going to get over a 16-game stretch. And if that is in fact the case, the NFL is in trouble. And I can't wait to see it. I really can't wait to see it. And you just love to see a guy take a challenge and respond to the challenge, rise to the occasion, and prove the naysayers and doubters wrong. And I think Dwayne Haskins has a tremendous opportunity to do that this season. And I think we're all looking forward to it. And I think I speak for all of us when I say we're all looking forward to number 7 doing exactly that. So with that being said, let's get to the comment section and read some of your comments and get to some of these super chats. And we got a super chat to kick off the night from Rob U. Thank you for the super chat, Rob U. Greatly appreciate it. Rob U, who writes, "What up, Lou? Really excited about Haskins' potential. Has Cam Sims progressed enough to be wide receiver 2? No. Cam Sims is not wide receiver 2 right now, but what he has done, and this is the thing about Cam Sims, he just needed to make the football team. That was his first priority this offseason. It wasn't to try to get to a position where you could be starting right away. It was just make the football team. You saw what Steven Sims did. He's the blueprint right now for guys who are on the outside looking in a year ago. Just find a way onto the team and then go from there. And as the season progresses and more opportunities come your way, take advantage of those opportunities so that next year you're not fighting for a roster spot, but you're fighting to improve your standing on this roster. And so Steven Sims, to me now, is a fixture on this football team. Like I couldn't imagine this roster without Steven Sims at wide receiver. And just remember, a year ago this time, we were debating during that 4th preseason game, should it be Cam Sims or Steven Sims? Which Sims should it be? And now this isn't even a discussion. Steven Sims might be the second most important wide receiver on his football team behind Terry McLaurin. And so when you look at the development of a Steven Sims throughout the course of a season, you're hoping Cam Sims could eventually grow and really take advantage of this opportunity that he earned. He earned this. He's not being given this opportunity. He earned the right to be on this football team this year, I believe. And so now the question is, how does he take advantage of the opportunities that comes his way? And we know that the NFL season is a war of attrition, and so he's got to be ready when his number is called. It may not be called often early in the season, but all it takes is one guy to go down, and he'll be thrusted into action, and he's got to be ready to make plays. Last year, some of the issues with him, in the preseason, especially down the stretch, was him dropping balls. He gets opportunities. He's got to make the best of them. But right now, your number 2 wide receiver on this team is Dontrell Inman. And they're going to go with the veteran. I think it's the right move and the right way to go. Your 3 starters, really, because when you start receivers, you're talking about 3 guys essentially now. The league has progressed now where it used to be 2 guys out wide as your starters. Now you're really looking at 3 guys as starters. And so you're going to have Terry McLaurin, you're going to have Dontrell Inman. Those are going to be your receivers outside, and then you're going to have Steven Sims in the slot. So to me, that's the reason that you're not going to see Cam Sims right now. But he's going to get his opportunities, but he's not ready to be wide receiver number 2 quite yet. And so I think that may be down the road, though. We'll see how the season progresses. He may ultimately slide into that spot down the road, but right now, I don't see that being a situation for him. I think that's Dontrell Inman's job right now, and hopefully Inman's able to stay healthy and produce for us because he's a really quality wide receiver and has been for a very long time in this league. And again, we still got Kelvin Harmon on the mend, so I'm not really pushing Cam Sims to be wide receiver number 2, but if he steps up and takes that bull by the horns and is able to show that he has that capability, I'm all for it. Competition is great, but I more so see Kelvin Harmon in that role than I do a guy like Cam Sims. But again, we will see. But thank you for the super chat to get the night started, Rob. You got another super chat. This one is from Trevor Patch. Thank you for the super chat, Trevor Patch. Greatly appreciate you. Trevor writes, "Hey Lou, the past few weeks has been nothing but excitement and optimism, but as a fan, I'm still weary of getting my hopes up." I wouldn't get my hopes up if I were you. And look, I'm always excited this time of the year. I always convince myself, why not us? But the reality of the situation is, and I've told you guys this ad nauseum. You're probably tired of hearing me say this. This ball club, more likely than not, is 6-10, 7-9. Again, it doesn't have to be. That's not etched in stone. Okay, things happen throughout the course of seasons, and even if we get off to a hot start, doesn't mean anything. And I always harken back to 2017 when we got off to a really good start. We started off the season 2-1, had the big win on a Sunday night versus the Raiders, and we were feeling good. We had the Chiefs on the ropes. Remember, the Chiefs started off the season that year like 6-0. We're the best team in football for the first quarter and a half of the season, and we had them on the ropes at Arrowhead on a Monday night, and we let them off the hook, had some injuries, and then that season went haywire and it went down quickly. But I don't care if we start this season off 3-1 in the first quarter, which would be amazing considering the schedule and how things shake out. I'd actually be shocked if we were able to do that. But I remember the Buffalo Bills 2 years ago, or even last year, not even 2 years ago, last year. I remember thinking the Buffalo Bills were going to stink. And, when I say stink, I wasn't talking, 3-13 like some people. But I thought they were going to be a 5-11, 6-10 team, sort of like where I think this team is right now. The only difference, they weren't playing under a first-year head coach. He had been in Buffalo for a few years. And, they had a number of guys that you felt like could do some things. And the defense was a really good defensive unit that year. And they had a young quarterback in Josh Allen. And voila, out of nowhere come the Buffalo Bills last year. In his second year as a quarterback, he took them all the way to the postseason. And I didn't anticipate that happening. A lot of people thought the Bills weren't going to be all that good. And somehow they managed to be a really good football team. So at the end of the day, you got to be able to roll with the punches. We'll see what happens with this football team this year. But I wouldn't get my hopes up if I were you. This is a team that's very young. Young teams are prone to mistakes. I've talked about this before. So it's going to be a lot of growing pains with this football team. I anticipate that being the case. So at the end of the day, I think this is a team that's going to win some games they probably have no business winning. They're going to lose some games that we probably thought they should be able to win. And when it's all said and done, we're going to feel really good about the progress made by this football team at the end of the season. And we're going to be really excited about the upcoming season in 2021 and the following season. So that's how I view this season. You shouldn't get your hopes up. If you're looking for 10-6, you're probably more likely than not going to be disappointed. If you're thinking this is an 11-win team, you are setting yourself up for disappointment. I hope you're not doing that. But for me, I'm going in, and I've always said this, and you don't have to feel this way, but I've always said when it comes to this organization, I hope for the best, expect the worst. That's probably not the right way to go about things, and hopefully Ron Rivera is able to change my mindset moving forward. But right now, I'm stuck in that mindset. This is over 30 years of being beaten up by this organization that I feel this way. So I go into every season optimistic. That's because that's just my personality. I think we've got a shot. And I told you, even when we're not good, I sit down every Sunday in front of my television and say, why not us this weekend? Why can't we? But I know better. I know the truth of the matter is really that we're not good enough and that we shouldn't beat the New England Patriots, or that we probably shouldn't beat the Baltimore Ravens this year early in the season. But why not? Why not us? Why can't we beat the Ravens? And that's the way I always approach things. But at the end of the day, you go into the season with whatever expectations you want to go into the season with. I've never wanted to kill another man's dream. Never been that guy. I'm just telling you that you should brace for impact because this is a young football team. You should brace for the mistakes. You should expect that they're going to make mistakes. They're going to have leads in the fourth quarter, and we're going to have some heartbreaking losses where we blow it, with a key turnover or a missed field goal or something along that line where you're like, God damn, we should have won that game. And there are going to be times where I come after a game and I'm going to be pissed off because we just let one slip through our fingers. That's what happens with young football teams. You're going to lose some games that you're supposed to win. And that's the growing pains that you go through, but they learn from these things and you hope that they benefit from it down the line. You just got to be willing to take those lumps and bumps along the way as a fan base because they're coming, and they're going to be some guys that frustrate you to no end and you're like, get this guy off the team. You just got to be able to take the good with the bad and understand that this is all a process, as Rivera has talked about since he's gotten here. And that's exactly what you need to do in terms of approaching this. This is a process. And this is year one of Rivera. Remember that as well. I think some of you are approaching this season as if this is year three of Rivera or something. This is year one of Ron Rivera. He's coming in. They've not necessarily turned over this roster, but a lot of changes have been made. And they're still figuring some things out. And remember, they're doing this with a unique offseason with no OTAs and no minis and no preseason games. There's a lot of things that they just don't know. And Rivera kind of talked about that in his presser. I thought it was a fascinating Zoom conference on the second and the third, especially this past one here today, where he really disclosed a lot of things about how this process has worked for them. And it's been tough. It's been kind of frustrating in some regards and aspects because they haven't been able to see some of these guys, on the field. So thank you for the super chat, Trevor Patch. I just will say this to you. Don't get your hopes up too high and don't over exceed expectations in your mind for this team. Like, don't set the bar too high. Don't set the bar at 10-6. Normally, that's a good bar to have. That's a good barometer for a normal season. It's not a normal season for us. All right, we're a young football team, first-year head coach, no offseason, a young roster, a lot of change on this roster. Just prepare yourself for a team that's going to be growing and getting a lot of on-the-job training, and that can be rough sometimes. So thank you for the super chat, Trevor Patch. Got another super chat. This one is from King of the North. Thank you for the super chat, King of the North. As always, greatly appreciate you, King of the North, who writes, I'm excited about this year too. Future is bright. Do you think we can afford to keep Smith, Love, and Foster? All three will probably take up roster spots to end up on IR. We will see. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. I can tell you this. I'm really excited. I think the future is bright for this football team. It could be a lot brighter in 2020 than I think. It's funny. I've encountered a lot of fans who feel like I feel that, okay, this is a process. I'm expecting, 6-10, 7-9, maybe 8-8. Then you get some fans that are out there that think, we're going to tear it up this year. We're going, 10-6, 11-5. Dwayne's. I had somebody the other day tell me Dwayne was going to be an MVP candidate this year. That's great to know. I don't see that happening, but I just want Dwayne to be good this year. I just want him to really solidify himself as an upper echelon young quarterback in this league. And so I think he can do that with a really solid season this year. And I really think that he's going to do that. But in any event, I think the future is extremely bright, and not just this season, but, down the road, I think we've got a chance to really compete if things go the way that I think they can go under this new regime. But as far as Alex Smith, Bryce Love, and Reuben Foster, the three guys coming off of major knee surgery, are concerned, it's going to be tough to get all three of those guys on the roster, especially if you don't feel like they can contribute in a major way. Alex, they're not really keying in on Alex contributing at all this season. If they have it their way, I think Alex is going to be your third quarterback for the entire season. So a lot of times I don't even know if he's active on game day or not. Most teams don't activate three quarterbacks on game day. You usually go with two. So it's hard to get a guy like Alex who's going to make the football team. Bryce Love and Reuben Foster are all on the team, and you're really not sure how all of those guys fit in and are able to contribute. I think it's okay to have two. I'm not sure if you can get away with three of those guys on your football team at once, especially when you got a young roster like we do. I don't think you can be holding roster spots hostage for guys to figure it out. I think two out of those three guys make the football team. Somebody's going to be the odd man out. And, if you depending on who you talk to, one of those guys is making the team, and two of them are going to be on the outside looking in. So I'm not one of those people. And I think you can surmise who the odd man out is. I pretty much told you and have, dropped crumbs as to what I was going to do there. But you can draw an inference. I've given you all the clues you need to figure out who's the one guy that won't make the roster out of those three. But we shall see. Thank you for the super chat, King of the North. Got another super chat from Rob U. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Rob U. As always, I appreciate you, Rob U, who writes, Lou, a dominant D-line can make average cornerbacks look really good. How do you feel about Fuller, Moreau, Darby with this D-line talent? That's been the assumption all offseason. That's the thing that has made us really bullish about this defense, is that if this defensive line and front can get pressure with just four, don't have to blitz a ton, you can just rush four guys and you can still hit home. If that is possible, it's going to change drastically how this defense is run and how this secondary is perceived to be. Now, if healthy, let's not act as if these guys are chopped liver. Okay, we don't have a trash secondary. Moreau is solid. We saw some good things from him last year. We hope that he continues to improve and grow upon what he did last year. We know that Fuller, what he did for us in the past, don't really know what he was doing in Kansas City, so can't really say. We're hoping that he comes back. First of all, he needs to get healthy. He's a guy that hasn't practiced in about a week now, and it's starting to become a growing concern about him, whether he'll be ready for week one. So we just need him healthy, number one. But if we stay relatively healthy with Darby and Fuller and Moreau and Moreland and some of these guys, I think this is a nice mix of young and veteran talent in the secondary, that if these guys stay healthy and they're not asked to do anything crazy and we're not putting them on islands consistently because we're rushing four, so that means you have more defenders in the back end and you're not leaving guys out one-on-one by themselves 40 yards down the field, and you're keeping everything in front of you and not allowing anybody to get over the top, I think this secondary could be really solid. Not great, not earth-shattering, not game changers necessarily, but I think they can be good football players. And so, one of the positions Rivera has talked about this offseason is being a lot better than people may think. And I've already told you Rivera said that he thinks this is more talented of a secondary or specifically cornerback room than he's had at any point in Carolina. That's saying a lot. You're talking about Josh Norman in his prime in Carolina. You're talking about a young corner in Jackson, who's been really solid for them, up and down at times, but he's a really solid corner. You're talking about Bradbury, who just got a big deal. There's a lot of talented corners that have come through Carolina, and he's saying that, look, this group may be better than all of those groups that I've had in Carolina. So that says a lot about where he thinks this cornerback group can be, this secondary in particular. And, you add that defensive line to the mix, and if they're able to get consistent pressure, this is a defense that could – and then, look, I've already told you that I expect this defense, and I'm not backing off of this statement, and I may be a little out of line for this. I'm probably stepping out of bounds. I don't know if I'm getting 2 feet in bounds with this statement that I've been making all offseason. I'm dragging that toe, though, and I'm hoping that I get 2 feet in bounds. But at the end of the day, I don't care. I feel that strongly about the collection of talent that we've assembled, and I'm not backing down. I think we're going to lead the league in sacks this year with our defensive unit, and it's not just the front four. You got the guys coming off the bench. You got these linebackers who are aggressive, who can blitz. I think as a collective unit, I think we're going to lead the league in sacks. And if I'm even remotely close, if we're third or fifth in the league in sacks, you've got to think that that's impacting the secondary in a positive manner, and that the secondary is going to be a lot better off than they have been in the past, because now we're getting to the quarterback at a much higher clip. So I think with this defensive line, if they're healthy and they're as good as advertised, Fuller, Moreau, Darby, Moreland, and all of these guys that are going to be on this football team are going to have a chance to eat well in the upcoming season. And they'll be much better off than a lot of us thought going in to this offseason. So thank you for the super chat, Rob. You got another super chat. This one is from King of the North once again. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, King of the North. Greatly appreciate you. As always, thank you so much for doubling up and blessing the program. King of the North, who writes, I feel great about Dwayne, the running backs, defensive line, linebackers, and cornerbacks. Feel okay about receiver, worried about tight end, Apke, and Christian starting. I predict we pick left tackle with the first pick next year. I've got a lot to say on that. I got a lot to say about that when we get to the 53-man roster, because there are certain things that you kind of touched on there that I think we're not out of the woods yet. And I think you are valid in your skepticism at the tight end position with Apke at safety and with Jaron Christian at left tackle. I think the fact that they went out and felt the need to trade for David Sharp, lets you know that they're not comfortable with what they have at tackle. We've talked about this. I talked about it on the David Sharp video that they're not comfortable. I talked about it before that. Remember, I was talking about, hey, keep tabs on Riley Reif. If he were to be released by the Vikings, that could be a guy that could really interest some teams, including here in Washington. I didn't think we would go after him because of the amount of money he would command on the free agent market for a team like, say, Philadelphia, who could use a left tackle at this point. But at the end of the day, he decided to take that restructured deal, stays in Minnesota. And so I think you had to change your focus if you're the Washington football team. And they did that. They hit up the Vegas Raiders. They said, hey, what is it going to take for us to get our hands on David Sharp? We know he's in the final year of his deal. You may not be all that thrilled with him. He's probably going to get released. Instead of us having to fight other teams to get his services, how about we just send you a 6th round pick? You send us a 7th, and you slide in David Sharp to make the deal a little sweeter, and we'll keep it pushing. And so that tells you that they have some apprehension about the depth they have at tackle. Maybe not necessarily an indictment on Christian per se, but just the depth that's behind him and some of the other guys on that offensive line, not too sure about. Then you take a look at Apke. They seem to feel really good about Apke. He's the guy that I'm most excited to see. Remember, just a year ago this time, I was down on Ryan Anderson. Wanted nothing to do with him. If you would have told me I could get a hot ham and cheese sandwich for Ryan Anderson, I would have said, hey, where do I sign? Let me get that. And throw in a juice box, you got a deal. All right? Doesn't even have to have a straw. Just if I could get rid of Ryan Anderson right now for something, I'd do it. And he turned out to be the most improved player to me defensively, and maybe, or you could argue, on the team, even though I think some guys on the offensive side of the football were tremendous. But they hadn't been playing here before. So I think that is a fair assessment to say he was the most improved player on the team last year, not just on the defensive side. And so when I look at a guy like Troy Apke, who's to say he can't be this year's Ryan Anderson? And remember, Anderson wasn't really even starting last year. He was still playing a ton of snaps, but he wasn't necessarily the starter. Apke from the jump is going to be out on the field, and we're going to see a ton of him early in the season. And I hope he shows a lot of people that he can play at this level and proves a lot of people wrong, because he's been written off. And, I was one of the people that I wasn't sure about Apke. I've been rooting for him, as I told you before, but I wasn't sure about him. I thought, and like I said, there were a couple of guys on the roster that I had just relegated to, strictly special teams and backups. And he was one of them. So was Jaron Christian. Well, new day, new lease on life, new coaching staff, new opportunities. Now let's see if these guys take advantage of it. And, tight end is definitely a position you should be worried about. I think the staff is still somewhat worried about the position. Rivera talked about, wanting a complete tight end. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on when we get to coach speak. But it kind of speaks to how he feels about the position right now. Him making that statement essentially tells you that they like a lot of qualities in each guy individually, but as one player, they don't have a guy that can do everything. He talked about Vernon Davis being a complete tight end. I think a lot of us would beg to differ, because Vernon Davis wasn't a tremendous blocker. He wasn't the worst blocker. He wasn't Jordan Reed in that department, but he wasn't a tremendous blocker. He talked about Greg Olsen, who he had in Carolina. That's a complete tight end, a guy that can block in the run game, catch the football, just all around good football player. Athleticism, good size, route running ability, hands, all of that stuff, all in one package. We don't have that here. Rivera pretty much said that. And so, the tight end position is definitely one where I could see you having a little bit of doubt there as well. But, at the wide receiver position, you should feel okay. I think that's the perfect way to describe that. That's kind of how I feel right now. I told you guys that I started to walk back my excitement about the receiver position a bit once AGG got injured, and, hearing that he wasn't really having the best camp anyway. And, look, I already knew how this goes a lot of times for rookies. They're not going to come in and set the world on fire and be guys that come in and dominate right out of the gate. 9 times out of 10, your young guys, especially at the receiver position, it's one of the harder positions to come in and dominate at. But I was expecting him to be a lot further down the food chain and not be a guy that we would have to rely on so heavily early in his career. And again, Kelvin Harmon being subbed out for Dontrell Inman, I should be fine thinking the way that I'm thinking. Like, we should be fine. His role shouldn't change. But I just kind of feel like there's a little bit more on his plate now that there's no Harmon. And that's probably not the case. And so, it's not the greatest wide receiver group. I'm not going to sit here and act as if this is a group you should be extremely excited about. But it's not terrible, And, McLaurin taking that quantum leap, Steven Sims taking that next step, that's exciting to me. And if those two do what we think they're capable of, I think by default, somebody else is going to be dragged along. And whether that guy is Cam Sims, whether that guy is Dontrell Inman, whether that guy is AGG, someone's going to benefit from Terry McLaurin being a problem and Steven Sims being a problem. The defense can't concentrate on all of these players. If those two are as good as we think they can be, someone's going to be allowed to eat because of what those guys are doing. It's the same thing I feel like with Chase Young. Everyone else is going to be allowed to eat because of the presence of a Chase Young. A Montez Sweat becomes better. A Jonathan Allen maybe becomes better. A Daron Payne maybe becomes better. Matt Ioannidis. Kerrigan, Ryan Anderson. These guys become better because Chase Young is going to be commanding so much attention. Same thing I feel about Terry McLaurin and even to a lesser degree, Steven Sims. Because of so much attention being paid to those guys, no one is going to be thinking about AGG. No one's going to be thinking about Dontrell Inman on 3rd and 7. So these guys should be able to make plays. So I just think if Terry McLaurin carries the weight of being the number 1 wide receiver, if he's able to shoulder that burden of being a number 1, a true number 1 in this league, and he shows us that this year, I think that's the biggest thing I'm looking for at the receiver position. Isn't for AGG to step up or Steven Sims. My number, because everybody else will follow suit. If we have a true number 1 wide receiver in Terry McLaurin, which I truly believe we do, and he proves that to us this year by going over 1,000 yards and dominating week in and week out, and ends up with 9 to 11 touchdowns on the season. And we look up and we say, Terry's the truth. All right, Terry had 1,311 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 87 catches this year after the season. If we look up and those are Terry McLaurin's numbers, we're going to say we got us a legit number 1 wide receiver. And then everything else will fall into place. That's the number 1 thing I'm looking for at the wide receiver position. And so if that happens, then I think Steven Sims is a guy that I'll feel really good about because I know I got a number 1. And then AGG is a guy that eventually will come along, and then you'll start to see the pieces fall into place. So I like the receiver position, but like you, I think it's okay right now. You know, until guys go out and prove to me, until Terry goes out and proves he's a legit number 1, until Steven Sims proves that he can be one of the better slot receivers in the league, until these things actually show and prove on the field, I've got my doubts just like the next man at the wide receiver position as well. But I do feel great about Dwayne. I feel really good about the running backs, D-line, and I think the linebackers, I slowly came around on the linebackers. I'm still somewhat apprehensive on the linebacking core. I'm not quite 100% sold on them yet like you are. However, I feel good about the mix that we have. I haven't felt this good about the athleticism that we've had at linebacker in a long time. Sean Dion can run. Cole Holcomb can run. Khaleke Hudson can run if he makes the football team. Obviously, Thomas Davis at his ripe old age can still move around on the football field. And so all of these guys that we're looking at, even John Bostic's a really solid athlete. I just think we got a good mix at the linebacker position. I think we've got a good group there, very versatile, can do a lot of things. I just need to see it. We haven't had good linebacker play in such a long time. I just need to see it before I can believe it. But the cornerbacks, I don't necessarily feel as good as you do either, but I think if they're healthy, and we're already seeing that this could be a problem with Kendall Fuller being on the shelf for so long, and Fab Moreau dealing with a little bit of an injury and missing some time in camp as well, and Darby having his track record of missing time with injuries and being nicked up, I got to see the cornerbacks stay healthy and perform. You know, all this hype about the people's corner in camp, well, we had that same buzz about him last year. Now I get it. It's a big difference. And even Jimmy himself said, I'm a totally different dude than I was in my rookie season. You know, the game slowed down for me. I understand what I'm being asked to do. I understand route combinations and concepts a lot better. I'm acclimated and adjusted to the speed of the game and everything around me a lot better. And so he thinks that he's in a much better position now than he was a year ago. But I still need to see it. So not as confident in the linebackers and cornerbacks as you are, but I do think that those are positions that when it's all said and done, we might actually feel really good about as well. Thank you for the super chat. And I'll say this just to wrap up your comment. I don't know what we're taking with the first pick next year, in our first round pick. We won't be the first overall pick, but I know what you were saying, our first round pick. I don't know if that's left tackle or not. You know, I can't say right now. You know, we may be saying that, you may be saying that now, and then, 14 games into the season, you're staring at another stud and you're saying, hey, we're good at left tackle, man. We need to go get a tight end, and this is the guy right here. We'll be at number 17 in the draft. Here's the guy that'll be available at 17. I really like this guy. So we'll see what happens. But thank you for the super chat, King of the North. Got another super chat. This one is from, let's see. So something happened to my chat. I hope I didn't miss anybody's chat. I think we're up to date here, but I apologize it's not letting me go any further up. So I'm hoping that I didn't miss anybody's comments. I apologize. I sincerely do if it skipped over your comment. Again, it took away a lot of the comments that were there. So I apologize in advance. This one is from Protect Sports. Thank you for the super chat. Protect Sports, greatly appreciate you. Protect Sports, who writes, love Haskins, front office, and etc. Let's go. I think that's how a lot of us feel. Haskins has to go out and prove it, though. But I think this organization is really trending in the right direction. I don't know if you guys saw this. ESPN put out a little bit of extra sauce on the Daniel Snyder story. They're trying to just put sprinkles on top. Really no new news there. But outside the lines, look, anytime you start getting a probe into a messy situation, outside the lines is going to step in and try to do their own spin on it. So apparently there's going to be an outside the lines on the dysfunction of this organization, specifically the sexual harassment claims and the probe into the organization and Daniel Snyder. And so they're doing a whole bit on ESPN, and there was a story that came out about Snyder and some more people trying to come out and pretty much talk about it. And Snyder pretty much just shoot it away and said, look, you guys are talking about stuff that happened in the past, which is, I told you, the angle he was going to take. We're heading in a new direction. We've diversified our front office. We like what we're building here. And so, again, nothing's going to come of it. But it's just funny that ESPN is trying to throw a little bit of sauce on top and put some sprinkles on the top of that fudge sundae there that, everyone's jumping on. But I love what we're building here, and I like the direction that we are heading in. Now, it needs to start translating into wins on the football field. That's the most important thing. We can really feel good about Ron and Jack Del Rio and this player and that player and Jason Wright and on the business side of things and Kyle Smith picking players. All of that is great. If it doesn't translate to wins, none of that stuff matters. And at the end of the day, none of those guys will be here if it doesn't turn into victories on the football field. So we'll see what happens. But I, too, feel like you, Protect Sports, we got a good thing going right now. I just hope it continues to blossom and grow right before our very eyes. Got another super chat. This one is from Rob U. Thank you for tripling up, Rob U. Greatly appreciate you as always, Rob U, who writes, why so much hype around Logan Thomas? They like his athleticism. He's a big guy, former quarterback. So he knows the subtleties of what everyone's supposed to do on the football field. That's one of the responsibilities of a quarterback. So from that standpoint, he's a smart guy. But secondly, he's big. He's 6'6". He's 250 some odd pounds. He's a tremendous athlete. Well, a good athlete. I won't call him a tremendous athlete. He's a good athlete. He has good movement skills for his size. And they like his ability to, continue to grow at the position. Remember, Rivera has talked about this. He talked about it again today, how Logan Thomas is a young guy, that he's a former quarterback, that he's still learning the tight end position. They like the fact that this guy isn't a finished product yet. They think that there's still more to squeeze out of the toothpaste tube that is Logan Thomas. They think that there is a lot more to squeeze out of that tube, and if they're able to get it out, they could have themselves a quality tight end in this league. So that's where the hype surrounding Logan Thomas is coming from. But make no mistake about it, as fans, I'm not hyping him up. A lot of fans aren't hyping up this tight end group. I think that's still one of the positions that we don't know about. And I'll tell you this, because there's nothing at tight end, it's easy to get excited about something. Let me repeat that for those of you in the back that may be a little hard of hearing or didn't get it the first time. Because there's nothing or perceived to be nothing at the tight end position, it's easy to get excited about something. That's generally how that works. You get excited about having something because you don't have anything. So you reach and you cling to the one thing that you think you may potentially have. That guy right now is Logan Thomas. Remember when we first signed him, there were a bunch of fans that were like, hey, this guy can be a beast. And they were talking about a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm like, where's your proof? I need empirical proof. Where's your evidence? I don't go off of what you think he can be or these flashes that you potentially saw. Like, this isn't Dwayne Haskins flashes in one season. This is a guy that's been in the league 4 or 5 years. Like, he's been around the block a few years. He's had opportunities. Now he's getting an opportunity to be a starter, something he hasn't really been able to lay claim to throughout his career, whether you're talking Buffalo or in Detroit. But we'll see what happens here. But I don't know if there's a ton of hype around Logan Thomas. I know the coaching staff is really excited about him. They have been all offseason long, and he's done nothing to slow that train down. They are really excited about Logan Thomas. We'll find out. And he scored a bunch of touchdowns in practice. We talked about that. All right, well, let's see it translate to the game then. All right, so I'm excited to see if we have grossly underestimated the tight end position. But I'm going in like this on the tight end position with lowered expectations. My expectations are extremely low for the tight end position. And if we get anything more than what I was expecting, I'll be pleasantly surprised. But until then, I'm expecting next to nothing out of the group as a whole. They have to prove to me that I was wrong. I'm not going in and giving them any kind of credit coming out of the gates. So thank you for the super chat, Rob. Got another super chat. This one is from my man Barrett Downing. As always, BD, holding me down. I thank you so much for your continued support, BD. And the super chat, Barrett writes, really looking forward to seeing this very young group grow and gel. Great show as always. Thank you, BD. Thank you for supporting and continuing to participate as always. Continued support, greatly appreciated. And I think that's the part that I'm most excited about. You know, and I always give you guys my Grizzlies analogy. And I'm a Braves fan as well. And it was so fun watching, they called them the baby Braves last year, come out of nowhere, win the division. A lot of people weren't anticipating that we were going to do what we did last year. We were supposed to be 2 years away from winning the division. And that was 2 years ago, excuse me. Last year, we were supposed to be good. The year before that, though, when we won the division and lost to the Dodgers in the playoffs, nobody was expecting much of anything from the Braves. They weren't supposed to be on the come for another 2 years. And we showed up early to the party. And it's fun when you watch young teams mesh and gel and the light bulb finally come on for a young club. And that's what we're hoping for with this Washington football team. It'd be great if we expedited the process and, you know, out of nowhere, here comes this Washington football team in 2020 when no one was expecting anything from them. And all of a sudden, here they are in December, week 16, dead in the heat of a playoff race. I'd love it. You know, I'm not anticipating that, but I'd love to show up and crash the party early. But I'm telling you right now, next year in 2021, I will not be talking with this same tone. I will be expecting this team to be a lot better, especially if Dwayne Haskins is as good as I think he can be. If he is good, I'm going to take my level of optimism a notch or two higher next year, really be expecting big things from this football team. So, as you said, I'm looking for this young group to grow and gel and really start to learn what it means to win in this league. And along the way, there's going to be some hard-earned lessons, man. Some ones where you go, come on, man, how we managed to lose that game? We were up 21-3 in the third quarter. How the hell did we blow that game? Young teams do things like that. We've got to learn how to win and how to come back when we're down, how to hold on when we're up big, how to withstand storms. You may be up early and everything's going right, and then the other team makes a run, and now all the momentum, Uncle Mo gets up off your sideline, walks across the field, and sits down on the other team's bench, and he's popping chips, and he's drinking some Gatorade on their sideline, and you got to understand how to change the tide, how to stem that tide, how to get a key first down in a crucial situation on the road in a hostile environment. They won't have that this year most likely because there won't be fans in the stands, but these are all things young teams have to learn how to be able to do. And that's something that you just can't expect these guys to just have right off the bat like that. So I like you. I'm looking for this young team to grow and gel and hoping that we get to see this thing to its conclusion and we really get to benefit from these guys growing together. Thank you for the super chat, Barrett Downing. Got another super chat, this one from Door Gunner. Thank you for the super chat, Door Gunner. Greatly appreciate you. Door Gunner writes, finally, quality coaching and discipline. Less dumb penalties should keep us in more games and save drives. More chances to win those close games. You'd like to think that would be the case, but with a young team, you're going to have mistakes. And I think this is going to be a much more disciplined team, as you alluded to. But, I think there are going to be some fumbles and some, little, dumb things. There were practices where Rivera said, look, we weren't sharp today from a ball security standpoint. We had some mental errors, 10 guys in the huddle, guys shifting the wrong way and having to burn timeouts. Like, those things going to happen maybe early in the season more so than later on in the season. But these are all growing pains of a young football team. But I, like you, think we're going to see less of the dumb penalties that we saw under Jay. We're going to see a much more prepared team week in and week out, something that we couldn't always lay claim to under Jay Gruden. And I think more likely than not, we're going to have ourselves in positions where it's not 3rd and 17 a ton or, 3rd and 9 a bunch. We're going to have ourselves in some positions where we can convert 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 3, and a little bit more advantageous down and distance situations that will be able to sustain drives, keep the defense off the field, and give us a chance to score points. So I think you're right. When quality coaching makes a massive difference in this league, and I think we have much better coaching. I mean, just look at the defensive side of football. I think Jack Del Rio is a tremendous upgrade from the last, 3 or 4 defensive coordinators we've had in Washington. Just him alone makes me feel a lot more comfortable with what we're putting on the field defensively, not to mention Rivera overseeing the whole roster and all the whole process. I feel really confident that we're going to clean up a lot of the things that have ailed us in past years. But again, it's still a process, so there will still be mistakes. All of these things will not be wiped away and erased in 1 year, but I think you'll see less of them this year than we have seen in the past years, especially under Jay Gruden. Thank you for the super chat, Door Gunner. Got another super chat. This one is from Martin Matthews. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Martin Matthews, who writes, "Hey, Louie, who gets cut if we sign Sanu? I don't think we're signing check 1212. Guess who? Mohamed Sanu. I don't see that happening. Had Sanu been cut when we were out on the market looking for Dontrell Inman, they may have went the Mohamed Sanu route before they went Dontrell Inman. But being that Inman's been here, he's already had a chance to gel and mesh with this offense and Dwayne Haskins. I think they're cool with what they have. And we've got some young guys that they're excited about that are going to ultimately end up on the practice squad, I believe. And so I think they're okay with the back end of the receiver group. Keep in mind that Kelvin Harmon is a guy that's on the mend, and he'll be back next year. Not to say that, I think, Dontrell Inman is a 1-year stopgap player. I don't anticipate him being here longer than this year, but he could end up being on this football team next year. Who's to say? Same thing with Mohamed Sanu. If they were to bring him in, he'd probably be a 1-year stopgap, a Band-Aid, but I don't think we need another veteran at wide receiver. I think we got enough with Inman. I think Sanu at this point of his career is probably looking to win. And I think he's going to have multiple suitors. Once teams cut down their roster, I think there'll be some teams, like a team like Atlanta, for instance. He knows the system. He's comfortable there. They know him. He knows them. If they're interested in him coming back to Atlanta, I'd be shocked if he didn't go back there. There are going to be other teams that are looking to win now, like a New Orleans, for instance, that may have a spot open at receiver, a veteran that comes in on a veteran team that's looking to win right now. Like opportunities like that, I think will be available for Sanu. I don't think him coming here is an option, really, to be honest with you. And I don't think he's a guy that really fits what we're trying to do anyway. But if you were to bring in a Mohamed Sanu, I think then obviously the first position you look at is the receiver position, because in order to bring him in, you got to get rid of someone that you were thinking about keeping. I think most fans would prefer to keep Cam Sims over a Mohamed Sanu. So, you got a young guy with potential upside and a veteran that's on the downside of his career. I don't think most fans would be willing to trade Cam Sims for a Mohamed Sanu. Again, a lot of you guys that when players get released, we need to sign him. You get caught up on trying to win this year, and you're losing sight of the big picture. Like a Fournette, that one makes more sense than a Mohamed Sanu. Why? He fits in the time frame of this football team. Leonard Fournette is only going into the 4th year of his career, okay? So when you look at Leonard Fournette, this is a young guy, 26, 27 years old, max, probably like 25, 26 years old, okay? Going into the prime of his career as a running back in this league. If, they were interested in him, and he's already signed in Tampa Bay, I'm aware of this, but if they were interested in him and they would have signed him, that would have made a ton of more sense than bringing in a 32-year-old Mohamed Sanu, which doesn't make a ton of sense, all right? And so you got to understand where this team is in their development process and where a veteran that's out there is in their career. Earl Thomas isn't interested in coming to Washington where they're looking to rebuild. He wants to go somewhere where he can win now because he doesn't have that many years left in his career. So, every time somebody gets released, we should sign them. Well, you got to look at not just the player and where they are, but you also got to look at where we are in our maturation process. And so not every guy that gets released that's a name needs to be in Washington. Because, again, this season, if this were the Jay Gruden era, then all these guys that got released, I'd be all for it because there was no direction with Bruce here and Jay here. They were just trying to win every year. Every year was a new entity. They weren't trying to build off of what they did the year before. Every year was an individual entity. And that's how you stink in this league. When every year is looked upon, and look, when I say that, I say it in this context. You have to take it with a grain of salt. There's context around what I'm saying. Every year in the NFL is an individual entity. It's a different year. But you should be building off of what you've done in the past. And you should be building off of what you did in 2014. That should help you in 2015. And what you did in 2015 should help in 2016. And so forth and so forth. Until you get to a point, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. You should be building. That's why the Seahawks are good every year. Because they continue to build off of what they've done. They take players off the practice squad and they get undrafted guys and they teach them. And then by year 2 or year 3, that guy's able to contribute. And if he's good, they bring him back. If not, they cut him loose. They let him get paid somewhere else like they did with Paul Richardson. They let somebody else pick up the price tag. All right, at the end of that, if there's a check at the end, they don't want to pick up that check. They got the most out of Paul Richardson. They let him get paid somewhere else. Look where Paul Richardson ended up. They didn't have to pay for that tab. That was an expensive tab. They didn't pay that tab. They let somebody else pick up the tab. And so that's what they do. They develop players. So they're building year after year after year. They're stacking good years on top of good years. That was never the case here. And so now what you guys have to get out of the mindset of, because Jay Gruden, Bruce Allen and company, they brainwashed you into thinking, we got to go after this guy and we got to try to win this year. And we got to try to be 9-7 and we got to try to be 8-7-1 this year. All right. You got to get out of that mindset. What you should be aiming for is 11-5 or better every year. That doesn't happen overnight. You build into that. And it may not happen this year. It may not happen next year, but 3 years from now, in 2022, when we start talking about the 2022 season, if we're not 11-5 that year or better, I'm going to be disappointed. Because we should be at a point there where all these young players have experience. We've watched this process play out. We've seen the maturation process. We've watched these guys grow. And now they should be able to we should reap benefits from these guys learning and being in the same system with the same coaching staff and learning and growing and having this continuity with the staff and with the front office, having continuity with one another and picking players that fit what Rivera wants to do and all of this stuff. You'll start to see it grow. So, the flash in the pan guys that get cut and you want to sign, you got to get out of that mindset. All right. Every time somebody gets released, we should pick them up. No, we shouldn't pick them up. How about building something here with what we have? That's what we should be more focused on. Taking the players that we have and developing them. Stop stunting the growth of young players to bringing some aging veteran because you want to win an extra game or two this year. It's not worth it. Allow these guys to grow so that down the road, we can benefit and win 4 or 5 more games and possibly hoist the Lombardi. That's what it's all about. Not finding a way to go 9-7 this year and having that come at the expense of guys learning and growing and getting playing time. That's not what you should be after. You should be after the big picture. If 9-7 comes in the process of these young guys getting experience and playing, hell yeah, that's what we want. If 10-6 happens this year with Dwayne Haskins and him leading this group of young players on the offensive line and all these skill guys that are young and the defense is growing, great. That's what we want. You don't want to go out and get a bunch of veterans and bring them in here and have them stunt the growth of a Cam Sims or an AGG or a Jaron Christian. You shouldn't be looking for that. You shouldn't want Sean Davis to come in here and stunt the growth if he's not, and he's a young guy too. So that's not, you shouldn't want Earl Thomas to come in here and stunt the growth of a Troy Apke if he can actually play. We're going to find that out. Maybe he can't play, but we don't know because we haven't really seen him get an opportunity. You shouldn't want a veteran player that's not going to be here long term when we really start winning and is going to be out of the prime of their career and not playing good football by the time we're ready to win. You shouldn't want those guys taking up valuable snaps from young players. If that's the direction you want to go in, you're missing the picture. You are thinking too small. All right. You're a micro thinker. You need to start thinking macro in terms of how this thing is. Larger, bigger picture is how you should be looking at this. You're looking at it from too small of a lens. All right. Thank you for the super chat, Martin Matthews, my man, Double M. Got another super chat. This one is from Joe Rockhead J. Thank you for the super chat, Joe Rockhead J. Greatly appreciate you. Joe Rockhead writes, sorry, bruh, less than 2 weeks from the season. It's hard to resist the Kool-Aid, those Kool-Aid samples. No matter the record, we get two magnificent games. He said, no matter the record, we will get two magnificent games. I totally feel you from the Kool-Aid standpoint, bruh. This is the time of the year where it's so hard, man. The cups are there. They got them all filled to the brim, all right? And this is the tropical punch Kool-Aid too, man. And they got a lot of sugar in it. I mean, this is the diabetes Kool-Aid, the best kind there is. All right, and this isn't sour. This is that shit that you drink and you like, God damn, I'm still thirsty because there was so much sugar in it. But, man, was that delicious. All of those cups are filled to the brim and you know they're good. All right? And it's so hard. It's very tempting to go over to the table right now and pick up that cup and just sip. Sip it slow. All right? But I'm telling you, resist picking up the Kool-Aid, man. All right? Some of y'all are guzzlers, by the way. It's okay to sip slow. Some of y'all go over there and y'all are chugging these foam cups, slamming it down and grabbing another one. And look, that's why you're jumping off the damn walls now, because you're getting a sugar rush and you think this team is going 11-5, 10-6 this year, and you're out of your mind. All right, because you had too much of the Kool-Aid. It's too damn sweet. All right, put the cup down. All right, and think sensibly about this. All right, and I get it, Joe Rockhead. I've been there before, and I understand this is the time of the year where you get excited. And every fan base is excited right now. This is the beauty of this time of the year. Everybody's 0-0. Everybody's got a shot. Quickly, about a half of the league will find out in the first 4 games that their team isn't any good again, or they're finding out, damn, we're not as good as we thought we were. There'll be some teams after the first 4 weeks of the season that will know a lot more about their team. We're one of those teams that we'll find out because we got a tough open to the season. If these teams are as good as we think, going to Arizona won't be easy. I think Arizona's going to actually be really good this year. I think we got the Rams, we got the Baltimore Ravens. I know I'm missing a game in there. I think the Giants are in there somewhere early in the season, but it's not going to be easy. But at the end of the day, sip slow, man. If you're going to drink the Kool-Aid, sip slow. That's all I can tell you. I can't tell you not to drink the Kool-Aid. I am strongly advising that you don't drink it, period. All right? But if you're going to pick up a cup, sip slow. That's all I ask. But, if you're going to drink, touche. All right? Cheers. Drink responsibly. But I don't want to hear any noise where you're disappointed because the team isn't as good as you thought they were going to be. It's a part of the process. That's what I've been continuing to say. But I think it's going to be a fun season. May not ultimately end in the amount of wins that we all hope, but I think it's going to be a really fun season. Last year wasn't fun at all whatsoever. Outside of week 1, last year wasn't fun. All the fun and joy was sucked out of the season after week 2 when we lost to Dallas. And you could see this thing was heading in the wrong direction. And then we got embarrassed by the Bears the following week. And then the Dwayne debacle happened at the Meadowlands. This season wasn't fun. You know, you knew Jay was getting fired. The New England game was a catastrophe. You know, we beat the Dolphins. Hooray! Yay, we beat the Dolphins. Now we're not going to go 0-16 because we thought at one point, hey, we might be 0-16 material. We were a really bad football team. So at least beating the Dolphins meant we weren't going to go 0-16. But last year wasn't fun. This year, I think you're going to have some fun restored in the organization. And really, as a fan base, I think you're going to have some fun in watching the football team. So thank you for the super chat, Joe Rockhead J. Got another super chat. This one from my man JP. Thank you for the super chat, JP. Greatly appreciate you. My man JP writes, I'm looking for improvement in year one of Rivera, Haskins, McLaurin, and Young all growing together. I would be happy as hell if Haskins won MVP, though. Not happening. Haskins is not going to win MVP, but what I can say is I'd be happy if he received some votes for most improved player this year. If they said, hey man, Dwayne Haskins is a strong candidate for most improved player in the league this year, I'd love to hear it. You know, that would mean that this guy took some huge steps in the right direction. I think he's got a chance to be one of those 27 touchdowns, 10 interception guys. I mean, that'd be a monster season for him. 3,000, 400 yards passing. I think he's got a chance to do some really good things, man. 27 over 10, over 3,400 yards passing. 68.9% completion percentage. A passer rating of 90, 7.8. Like, that'd be a great season for him. Excellent season in his first year as a starter in this league, and that would give us so much promise for the future, So, and it's very attainable. I think it's within his grasp this year. Again, it all depends on his growth and development, and also the growth of the players around him, and probably even more important than that, the offensive line in front of him. So we'll see, but. Thank you for the super chat, JP. I think we're all looking for that improvement year one from all of these guys. And really, I've said this a million times. You're looking to see who are the guys that are going to be fixtures and guys that are going to be a part of the foundation and building blocks of this roster and organization moving forward. Who are the guys that we can count on week in and week out to be really good football players, better than the opposition is putting on the field? We don't have enough of those guys right now. We hope to identify some of those guys. We hope that Cole Holcomb shows us, hey, he's a stud. We hope that Terry shows us legit number one here. We hope that Steven Sims says, hey, I'm a legit slot option in this league, one of the better ones you'll find. We're hoping that Chase Young is, as advertised, elite edge rusher. So is Montez Sweat. We're hoping that someone in the interior steps up and says, hey, I'm dominant too. You're hoping that Troy Apke says, hey, I can actually play safety and start. Like, I'm actually a really good safety. We're hoping that these things take place. Jaron Christian says, yeah, I'm a left tackle for real. I can start in this league. I'm capable. You're hoping that these guys take that step. Wes Martin says, hey, I know y'all had some questions and some doubts about me at left guard, but I'm here. I'm good. We good over here. Like, that's what we're looking for. We're hoping that at season's end, there's not as many holes to fill on the roster as there have been in past years, where we go into the offseason saying, hey, this is our entire list, and it's a grocery list long of items. It's a long list, and we got to go through the entire store, and the cart's getting pretty full when we look up like, damn, this is going to be a really hefty total, man. You think we're going to have enough when we get to the checkout counter? Hopefully next year, we look at the list and we say, hey, this is a really doable list. We can shop for some of these items at the free agency store, but we can get a lot of this stuff in the draft. We don't even have to go heavy on free agency. We can sign a lot of our own guys back, Brandon Sheriff and Jonathan Allen if they see fit, and keep the guys, Ryan Kerrigan, if they want him back. We can bring a lot of our stuff back, and we can get a couple of items, the bread, egg, cheese, milk, list where you just go and get a couple of items, get out. But we can also go in the draft and shop for a few items and feel really good about what we came out with and not feel the need. And that's something that Kyle Smith talked about, not feeling the need to chase after a position because you're so desperate. That's how you make mistakes. Well, if you don't have glaring needs, you can then just go off of your draft board. So I think that's what we're really looking for. And I agree with you, JP, looking for that improvement from these guys. Thank you for the super chat, JP. Got another super chat. This one from Atypical Brother. Thank you for the super chat, Atypical Brother. Greatly appreciate you. And not a typical brother, atypical. And he different out here, man. Who writes, haha, Clinton Dix. Do you see him returning to DC? I like Apke, but feel like more competition is needed for free safety. Well, he's not available. He's in Dallas. So it's not like, haha, Clinton Dix is sitting out there and he's available. Last time I checked, he didn't get cut from the Cowboys. Do I need to check on that? Or did I miss something? Because a lot of dudes is getting cut, surprise cuts. Like a lot of people didn't expect the Raiders to cut their corner. Oh, shucks. God damn it, I can't remember his name. Anyway, a lot of people didn't expect the Raiders to cut their corner. He's out there. Oh, yep. Cowboys released haha Clinton Dix. So he didn't make their football team. So I don't know. The safety position is interesting because we really haven't heard a lot at the safety position. Like, just think about the little that we've heard of Sean Davis in camp this year. Like, you haven't heard anything about him. I don't think he's getting cut, but it's not a lot of information that's come out about the safety position other than Troy Apke. And apparently they really like Cameron Curl, the rookie 7th round pick out of Arkansas. So I don't think they're going to do anything at safety position. To me, I've said this all along, the only positions that I really think they're really going to be scrounging through the scrap heap of players that get cut when we get to Saturday is tight end and offensive line. I think, and you've already seen them make a move along the offensive line. They may be done there. They may not be done there. But I think those are the two positions in particular that they'll be watching with great attentiveness, because if something shakes free that they're really interested in, that they've liked in the past, or that they had a high grade on coming into the league, and maybe a team took him right before they were planning on taking him, or whatever the case may be, they may act on that. But outside of those two positions, I don't really see them feeling the need to go elsewhere looking to improve this football team. I think they feel good about a lot of the positions on this team. I think Rivera said, look, we're going to have a lot of guys that we feel good about on our practice squad. That tells you a lot about what they think they have on this football team. So I don't surmise them going out and adding anybody from the outside in at this point of the year, but tight end and, of course, the offensive line. Safety is interesting because we haven't heard a ton about the safety position, but I think they like what they have at the safety position. I think they feel like they have good depth there with DeShazer Everett, Sean Davis, and even Cameron Curl to a lesser degree. So I don't think Clinton Dix is back here. And I don't know how they feel about him. I don't know how the staff feels about Clinton Dix, but I don't think he's a guy. And look, there's a reason he got cut from Dallas. There's a reason why he can't seem to find a home. He's been on 4 teams in 2 years now. Green Bay last year, Washington last year, Green Bay 2 years ago, Washington 2 years ago, the Bears last year, and now Dallas. So 4 years, or 4 teams, 2 years, and he's going to add himself to another roster, I would assume, and make it a 5th team in 2 years. So there's a reason he's not sticking on anybody's roster. So I don't think he'll be here, but thank you for that super chat. And I did not know that. So you were actually breaking news. I did not know that Clinton Dix was released. See, got another super chat. This one is from Billy Ampafo. Thank you for the super chat, Billy Amp. Greatly appreciate you. My man Billy Amp writes, what's good, Lou? I know you said before that you don't see Dan selling the team, but do you think anything will come about as the NFL has taken over the investigation and now ESPN is talking? And I kind of alluded to that. I read the article that ESPN published today. I told you Inside the Lines, or Outside the Lines, excuse me, is doing a whole edition on on this organization and Daniel Snyder and the toxic culture and environment, working environment that he has fostered over the years. And I still don't think anything's going to happen to Dan. I don't think he's going to sell the team. Again, something catastrophic would have to come out, really casting Dan in an even, an even more unflattering light. I don't think anything new has come out, even in this ESPN article, and I think the subsequent Outside the Lines show that's going to come from it. I don't think anything new is really going to come of that episode. You may get some more women speaking up that feel like, okay, they really want him to sell. And that's the new rallying cry now, is that, the attorney that the women have hired are seeking, Daniel Snyder's ownership as collateral damage here. They want him to sell this team. They don't think he should be in charge of an NFL franchise. But I don't think they're going to get their wish. I don't think he's going anywhere. But if they continue to turn up the heat and, this continues to be a problem for the league may have to step in. But as of right now, I don't anticipate anything happening. I don't think the NFL is going to find anything egregious that hasn't already been outed. People have been digging in this organization for quite some time. So I don't anticipate them finding anything that we don't already know about. Again, more women may choose to speak up. And if there is more damaging information about Snyder himself and some of the activity he may have engaged in, and there is actual proof, which a lot of this is hearsay. So again, it's their word against his. That usually isn't enough to get someone out of a situation like this and to force him to sell. So unless someone is coming with some tangible proof, there needs to be a smoking gun. And I've already said, and you alluded to this, if there isn't a smoking gun in the hand of Daniel Snyder while it's still smoking, I just don't see how he's going to be forced to sell this team. So I don't think anything's going to come of this. So I've just, like I said, I've just moved on from it because to me it's not a big deal. I don't see anything coming of it, but it's still a lot of noise, still a lot of background noise. So we'll see what happens. But thank you for the super chat, Billy Ampafo. Got another super chat. This one from my man JP. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, JP. Greatly appreciate you. My man JP writes, Gibson is having a great camp so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing Haskins quiet the tank for sunshine talk. Again, I'm not engaging in any of that. I don't know of too many people that are engaging in that talk. I've been around a lot of positive Haskins thinkers that expect him to go out and ball this year. I know a lot of you frequent, Facebook pages and groups, and there's a lot of negativity in those things. I'm not in any of those groups or anything like that, so I'm not seeing a lot of that stuff. I'm not privy to a lot of that talk and that way of thinking. I think Haskins is going to prove that he is ready to be the starting quarterback for this franchise. Not just for the 2020 season, but for many years to come, something that we haven't been able to lay claim to for quite some time. I know that we had a brief period there with, dare I say, Kirk Cousins, but we haven't had a franchise quarterback, and I've done this whole bit before, so I don't need to do it again, but we haven't had a franchise quarterback since, Joe Theismann in the 80s. I mean, that's ridiculous that I can even utter those words. The closest thing we had after that was Mark Rippon, and he wasn't a franchise quarterback. We haven't had a franchise quarterback here. We just had a slew of quarterbacks come through here. The door has seemed to been, revolving, spinning round and round, but we haven't gotten a guy here to be able to say that's our guy. We haven't been able to lay claim to a quarterback and just know, all right, we know what we're getting from this guy. Now we can focus on other positions of the football team. I think Dwayne Haskins is going to prove that he's that guy for us this year. I'm looking forward to it. So as far as Gibson is concerned, he's had a really good camp, but I wouldn't say that he's been strong at camp. I'd say he's adjusting to all that has been put on his plate. He's a rookie. They've overloaded him to see how he would handle it. At times he was overwhelmed. They scaled back. Then they realized we want this guy on the field because He's a difference maker. And so they put more back on his plate. And he's adjusted, and he's continuing to adjust. And I think he's a guy that I'm excited about this year. And I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and I said, we haven't had a guy like this in Washington in forever. We don't do guys like this. I'd always watch other teams around the league and say, man, it'd be nice to have a guy like that. We haven't had one of those guys. Now we do have one of those guys, that can do a lot of things on the football field and is a mismatch. You line him up in the backfield and then you motion him, and now he's got one-on-one against a linebacker. That's a mismatch for a guy that used to be a college wide receiver. So, and runs a 4.3 40. You feel really good about Antonio Gibson and the potential that he has moving forward. So I'm excited about him, Haskins, and, the potential of this offense. They're all young. It's going to take a little while, I think, for them to click, and along with a young offensive play caller in Scott Turner. But there's a lot of potential there. That's a scary word in this league. Potential is. But you rather have it than not have it. And we've got it on offense. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he, dispatches all of this talent and all of these guys that we have, and how he's able to disseminate the football amongst them this upcoming season. Thank you for the super chat once again, JP. Got a third super chat from my man JP. Thank you so much for the super chat, JP. Greatly appreciate you. My man John Perez writes, are you worried that Chase will get flagged after every single play because he can just hit like hell? No, I'm not worried about that. I'm looking forward to him just wreaking havoc and being the kind of stud that we've lacked in Washington for far too long. We haven't had a guy that we've been this excited about on the defensive side of the football since Sean Taylor. Let's call a spade a spade. It's been since 2008 that we've had this kind of player on our football team, and or 2007, excuse me. It's been a long time, and I'm really looking forward to Chase Young wreaking havoc, being the guy that we think he is capable of being, living up to all the hype. I know we've put a lot on Chase Young. He wouldn't have it any other way. I think this guy is fully capable of coming in and taking the league by storm. I think he is double-digit sacks right out of the gate. I'd be actually surprised and probably disappointed if he played a full 16-game slate and wasn't able to achieve double-digit sacks. That's how good I think this guy can be. If he got to like 9.5, I wouldn't, and especially if, let's say, he started slow and came on strong towards the end, like Montez Sweat did. I wouldn't be disappointed necessarily in that, but I think he's better than Sweat. I think he's better than anything we've seen here in quite some time, and I just think that this guy is a walking double-digit sack getter. So I think he is a guy that he plays the game the right way. He's not a dirty football player. I don't see him getting flagged for anything, more than any other guy in the league. You just got to try to stay away from the helmet of the quarterback. That's it. He's a big guy, and he said that he may not be done growing, which is scary to think about. But, there aren't many 6'6", 6'7" quarterbacks in the league, so he's just got to make sure that his point of contact is his strike zone is the word I was looking for, the phrase I was looking for, is one that will keep him from picking up senseless 15-yard penalties and staying away from the head of the quarterback. But outside of that, I don't see him picking up a bunch of flags. I just see him dominating, period. Thank you for the super chat once again, JP. Got another super chat. This one from my man BD. Double up. Thank you for the super chat and doubling up. Barrett Downing, greatly appreciate you. My man BD writes, hey Lou, I just got the LTN merch. It came really quick and I'm in Cali. Great quality, bro. My son and I will be rocking your gear. Respect. I appreciate that, man. I really, really do. And I appreciate you blessing the program as often as you do. I appreciate you going out and getting the merch. And I want to take this time to ask all of you out there that if you can, support the Louie T Network by getting you some merch, man. I really do appreciate you, Barrett Downing, and all of you who have already purchased merch. And I am asking you who haven't to, purchase some merch at some point to support the movement that is the Louie T Network. Again, I know a lot of you support and love what I do, and the best way that you can show your appreciation is by grabbing some merch and continuing to help me power this movement known as the Louie T Network. So I appreciate you, BD, for purchasing the merch, and I look forward to chopping it up with you in the future. And hopefully we'll be rocking our merch together while we're chopping it up in the near future, man. Thank you so much for the support and love, Barrett Downing. Got another super chat from Trevor Patch. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Trevor Patch. Greatly appreciate you. My man Trevor writes, after Terrell Pryor, I can trust. I think he meant I can't trust any quarterback positional switches at this level. Logan won't work out. I'd like to see Ron go and get an O.J. Howard over another wide receiver. Look, you can't just paint a broad stroke over every, convert. Okay. A great example, and he wasn't a receiver. He wasn't a quarterback, I should say. Excuse me. But when you look at a guy like, what's the Raiders tight end's name? Oh, man. Shucks. It's gonna kill me until I can remember his name. I'm gonna have to look him up. But he had a breakout year last year. They just paid him a bunch of money. His name is Darren Waller. And Darren Waller was a wide receiver when he came into the league, drafted by the Baltimore Ravens. He made the switch over to tight end. I get it. Quarterback to tight end, it's two different things. And I totally get that. Wide receiver to tight end, a lot closer, easier transition. I understand all of that. But, you can't just paint a broad stroke over everyone and say, oh, because he was an ex-quarterback, he can't make the transition to tight end. We've seen a lot of guys make that switch from quarterback to wide receiver, and some guys make it successfully from tight end, quarterback to tight end in this league. Look, Terrell Pryor didn't work out. He looked like Tarzan, played like Jane. We all understand that. But that doesn't mean that Logan Thomas can't be a quality tight end in this league. He may never be a star or a stud. But at this point, I don't think we're necessarily looking for that right now. Maybe in the offseason, we'll be looking for a tremendous upgrade at the position. But right now, we just want somebody that's serviceable. And even if Logan Thomas never proves to be a stud tight end, if he's just good, well, guess what? We can use a good number 2 tight end. Let's say that we're in the market for an elite tight end and we get one next offseason. You still need a quality number 2 and a quality number 3 tight end. And if he turns out to be a quality second option at tight end, wouldn't you be excited about that? Wouldn't you be happy that Logan Thomas is on the roster and able to give you some quality snaps as a number 2 option at tight end or possibly a number 3 tight end? Like, I think that, the expectation for him isn't, or it shouldn't be. I can't speak for what people are out there, putting on his plate. For me, it's just, hey, just give me something at tight end. We had really nothing last year after Vernon Davis got injured. Give me something at tight end this year that I can sink my teeth into. Give me something that we can say, hey, the defense can't fall asleep behind the wheel because Logan Thomas can hurt him at the tight end position. We didn't have that last year. Nobody was afraid of Hale Hinches. Nobody was afraid of Jeremy Sprinkle. Sprinkle me, bitch. Sprinkle me. Nobody was afraid of our tight ends last year. They were a joke. So this is a guy that potentially could make teams have to respect him. That's all I'm looking for, is a guy that holds his own, carries his own weight, and forces defenses to actually have to account for him. Teams weren't accounting for our tight ends last year, and for good reason. All right? We need a guy that the defense has to at least respect and understand he's on the field. Somebody needs to stay with him or he can't hurt us. And I think he may actually give us that. But, we're not giving up what it's going to take to go get an O.J. Howard. And you know what? I don't want to. Not when we can probably find one in the draft, So if O.J. Howard becomes a free agent and he's still got another couple of years on his rookie deal, so that's not happening, I'd be all for signing him as a free agent. But, if you're telling me, just like I was all for signing Austin Hooper this offseason, I was all for it. Hunter Henry, any of those guys, if they were able to come here, and I don't think Hunter Henry's going to be back in LA with the Chargers next year after this franchise tag, unless they're able to work out a long-term deal. But let's say he shakes free from Los Angeles and he has a good season and he stays healthy and they just can't find a way to make the numbers work and they don't want to pay him. And say we do. And we like him. And he's an all-around tight end like Rivera said he was looking for. I wouldn't have a problem with that. Young tight end fits our time frame, our timeline of where we are as a team and where he is in his career. If he can stay healthy and prove that he can stay healthy, I'm all for it. But, I don't want to give up draft capital to get a guy when we can find a way to draft a guy and get some quality out of the tight end and not have to give up draft capital. And, oh, by the way, don't have to pay a ton of money to a guy when you can get cheap labor. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. That's how you keep your organization running well, is because you get young, cheap labor out of the draft, which allows you to free up the money to sign your guys back when their deals are up. That's what we failed to do over the years. That's why guys go elsewhere and flourish. That's why, and we haven't done a great job of drafting to begin with, but even the guys that we felt like should be here, we haven't always done the best job of maintaining those guys and keeping them here because we are spending our money elsewhere instead of getting the kind of players you need to get in the draft, which allows you to then spend your money where you really need to spend it, which is on your own guys to keep them in Washington. So thank you for the super chat, Trevor Patch. I would just say this. Don't allow Terrell Pryor's shortcomings to affect the way you view guys that are converting from one position to another, especially from the quarterback position to tight end. Don't allow Terrell Pryor's failing here cloud your judgment or blind you from a guy like Logan Thomas, who might have the ability to do it and do it at a relatively high level. Have an open mind is all I'm saying. Thank you for the super chat, Trevor Patch. Got another super chat. This one is from Jordan Light the GOAT. Thank you for the super chat, Jordan Light the GOAT. Greatly appreciate you. Jordan Light the GOAT writes, do you believe the O-line can protect Haskins? Yes, I do. I do believe that this offensive line, again, assuming health, that is the biggest key. If we're healthy, I think we'll be just fine up front. If we're not healthy, that's when the waters can get a little murky. All right. That's when things, and the staff has essentially told you as much, that they're not as sold on the depth, specifically at tackle, behind what we already have on our front line. But if you're telling me that we're going into battle every week with the same five guys of Jaron Christian, Wes Martin, Chase Roulier, Brandon Sheriff, and Morgan Moses, I'll tell you that I'm absolutely, unequivocally, 100% fine with that group. Now, we still need to see what Jaron Christian looks like at left tackle. We haven't really seen that on a consistent basis, but he's going up against good football players in practice every day. Montez Sweat, Chase Young, Ryan Kerrigan, Ryan Anderson. These guys are helping sharpen his skill set. So he worked with Trent in the offseason. Look, this guy was a third-round pick for a reason. They felt really confident that he had all of the skills necessary to be a starting tackle in this league. Maybe it's starting to finally show itself this year with more dedication from Jaron Christian. I feel good about the offensive line, probably more so than any of you out there. What I am worried about is the depth behind the starters. If we're healthy, I'm good. If we're not, that's when I get worried. But if you're asking me, do I believe in this offensive line as is, health intact? Yes, I do. Thank you for the super chat, Jordan Like the GOAT. Got another super chat. This one is from Hawk. My man, Hawk! Hawk! It's been way too long. I don't know if you have been lurking or if you just been doing your own thing, or what the case may be, but it's so good to hear from you, man. It's been way too long. Man, it's been a long time. He says, thinking about long-lost Tim Settle, don't think he will make the team. He's got a lot of talent. Do you think he's still got a chance to make it in the NFL? Yeah, and Tim's going to be on this football team. They like Tim Settle. He provides good depth along the defensive line. There's no way he's getting cut. So I think Tim Settle is going to be just fine on this football team. And I think he's going to be another one of those guys that is going to flourish in this system where he's allowed to penetrate up the field, which is what really attracted us to him in the first place. I wasn't excited about Tim Settle, the two-gapper. I was excited about Tim Settle from Virginia Tech that was penetrating and creating havoc on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage as a one-gap penetrator. That's the guy that I got excited about. Not the guy that's supposed to be holding up offensive linemen and allowing his linebacker to roam free. That's not what I was excited about from Tim Settle. So I think we're going to see what Tim Settle is truly about. He's going to be allowed to be in his true element. And that's being a one-gap penetrator, I think. So good to hear from you, Hawk, man. It's been way too long. And I got another super chat. This one from Mr. Laughing My Head Off. Thank you for the super chat, Mr. Laughing My Head Off. Greatly appreciate you. Mr. Laughing My Head Off writes, how many players do you think are not safe after the 53-man cut Saturday to replace from the 31 other teams' cuts? My guess is 3, maybe also who are we letting go? That is an interesting question, and that's the real question that a lot of people don't ask themselves. And that's what I'm going to talk about when we get to my 53-man roster projection. But that is a very intelligent question that you just asked, because a lot of people don't think about that. They just think about the 53-man roster, the guys that are already on the squad now, and when they trim it down to 53, that's it. No, 31 other teams are going to release players that this team deems to be talented, that they've got reports on, that they think can play in this league, that may be an upgrade over 2 or 3 different players on their roster currently. And so when you look at the other cuts that are made, if they see a player or two out there that they think, man, this guy is really talented, we got to act on this guy fast. Remember, we're second in line in the waiver claim department, only after Cincinnati. So we get first dibs essentially on anybody that gets cut. So they're going to be watching the waiver wire very closely. And if they like a player or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, you can see a situation, where they're going to put in a waiver claim for a guy or two to bring him on board, And, a guy that initially made the 53-man roster may ultimately end up on the practice squad. And that's a great example could be a Khaleke Hudson. They may see another guy that they might have had a 4th-round grade on in the draft, but they weren't in a position to get that guy. And then you get to a position where a team picked him in the 5th round. He doesn't make their team, but they had a 4th-round grade on this guy. They really like him. And they drafted Khaleke Hudson in the 6th round, and they're saying to themselves, we got to get a chance to get a guy that we liked as a 4th-rounder. We got to take him at linebacker. And now all of a sudden, Khaleke Hudson is a guy that they're saying, all right, Khaleke, we really like you, but here's the deal. We like this guy better, so we're going to put you on the practice squad now, all right? And if you pass waiver claims, we're going to slide you on the practice squad. We'd love to have you because we really like your skill set and we think you can develop. But this is a guy that we feel like we got to have. We got a second shot at getting him, and we're going to take that shot. Like, there are going to be opportunities like that. There could be a corner that they've had their eye on. Remember, this was a draft that I thought we needed to address corner. And then we didn't necessarily do that. And it wouldn't shock me if they saw a guy. Again, same premise. Had a 5th-round grade on a guy. He gets cut. And they're like, man, back end of our cornerback situation is cool, but I think this is a guy that could really help us. And they go after that guy. So I think that's a really intelligent comment there, Mr. Laughing My Head Off, because there are going to be, to me, at least 2 guys that could potentially, and we'll go over those guys. I'll talk about those positions as we go through the 53-man roster, which is why I'm just so enamored with this particular year in the 53-man roster, more so than I have been in the past, because of how different this process is ultimately going to be. Great question, great comment. Thank you for the super chat, Mr. Laughing My Head Off. Got another super chat. This one is from Santiago Tradell. Thank you for the super chat, Santiago Tradell. Greatly appreciate you. Hope all is well with you and your family. Know you were someone that had some underlying issues. Hopefully you're staying safe out there and protecting yourself. Santiago writes, what's good, Lou? Hopefully you are being safe and blessed. Still ready to see what the TD fight song is going to be. I don't know what they're going to do for the touchdown fight song. I would assume they're going to play the same thing. And it might just be hail to the football team. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know what they're going to do. They may have to switch it up. Maybe the tempo might be a little faster, slower. I don't know. Maybe they don't do any of that stuff this year while they're trying to figure out what the next move for this organization is going to be. Maybe they bring back the band next year when, because the band is really more so for the fans and their enjoyment than anything else. Well, there's no fans in the stand, so maybe there isn't any band there playing. These are questions that we don't actually know the answer to. They may not have a band this year, and maybe they don't even need to have a band this year. Less money that you have to pay out to employees because of a year like this year with COVID and whatnot. They may decide that's less people that you have in the stadium, things of that nature. So you probably don't even have a fight song this year. Maybe, next year with new advertising and a whole new marketing strategy and a brand new nickname and everything that comes with it. Maybe they'll have all of that stuff ironed out. Maybe next year, but this year, I don't think you're going to get anything. But we shall see. Good to hear from you, Santiago Tradell. Got another super chat. This one is from Mr. Laughing My Head Off. Thank you for the super chat and double up. Thank you for doubling up, Mr. Laughing My Head Off. Greatly appreciate you. Mr. Laughing My Head Off writes, haven't had a chance to look at your merch, but I will. You got to tell me where you got that Nationals hat with the burgundy and gold. One more thing, Marcus Boss showed out on Saturday, almost 3 touchdowns. Okay, let's take these one at a time. Appreciate you checking out the merch, and I'll make sure that I advertise it tonight so that you get a chance to take a look at it briefly. There's more than what you're going to see tonight, but make sure you go. Both the links are down in the description, so you can click on either one of the links, my link to my website or the link to the Print Champs. Either way, you'll be able to access all of the merch on either one of those sites. So thank you for that. Where I got this hat, I've had a lot of people ask me about this hat. I got this so long ago. First of all, I'm a Braves fan, so what do I want with a Nationals hat, right? This was back in my high school days. College days, right on the cusp. I think it was kind of bleeding into high school, into college, early on in the process. So you're talking about a really long time ago. And I bought this hat back when I was trying to be cool. I saw it was burgundy and gold. And that's when New Era was doing this cross-promotional thing with, teams in the same city. So there was a Philadelphia Phillies hat with Eagles colors, stuff like that. You get, baseball team and football team merging together in the same city. So it was pretty dope. They had a bunch of different teams. Obviously, I'm a Washington football team fan, and I saw that hat. I'm not a Nationals fan, but I was like, this is too dope to pass up on. But I'm a guy that generally doesn't wear merch of a team that isn't my own. So for me to be wearing the curly W on my head, only reason I'm doing it now is because I just need more merch that has Washington on it. This is a W. It represents Washington, so I'm rolling with it for the time being. I never thought I would wear this hat again. It's crazy because I was going to throw this hat away. I had no value for it, because I vowed, as I got older, I vowed to never wear another team's, because I used to wear all kinds of hats. Jerseys that weren't my favorite team. When you're coming up, when you're young, you wear anything because it's cool, it matches your shoes, that kind of thing. But as I've gotten older, if it's not of my team, I'm not wearing it. So this hat just happened to still be laying around, and it's now relevant because of the situation. I don't have a lot of hats that don't have a Redskins logo on it or doesn't say Redskins on it. So right now, I still got to go shopping for some new merch. But this kind of fit. And so they don't sell these hats. You may have to go on eBay or you may have to go on Amazon. You may be able to find these hats somewhere. But I got this hat over a decade ago. You're talking 15 years plus where I got this hat. I mean, I got this hat a long, long time ago. They're not selling these in the store. You're not going to just go to Lids and find this hat in the store. They're not selling these. As a matter of fact, I didn't even get this from Lids. I got this from a shoe store. Okay, I think I got this from I don't think it was Foot Locker. It might have been like a Finish Line or something. But anyway, so that's the story with the hat. And then Marcus Ball, he's making a football team. We talked about this already. He's a guy that they're extremely excited about his skill set, not necessarily where he is as a complete tight end, but again, when you've got nothing and you find something, you tend to cling to it. So he's one of those guys on a more talented team with tight ends that are established or have more talent. Marcus Ball is probably on your practice squad, sort of like he was in Carolina last year. They had Greg Olsen. They had the kid from Indiana, Ian, what's-its-face. And so they had a bunch of tight ends that they were, and they had the Manhurts guy. Ian Thomas is his name, a guy that I really liked coming out of the draft a couple of years ago. And then they had Manhurts as their third tight end. He didn't have a place on their roster last year, did Marcus Ball. But they knew about him. They were comfortable with him because he was on their practice squad last year. So, again, he's a guy that they like. And Rivera talked about this. He said Marcus Ball might be the most athletically gifted tight end we have on the football team. That's saying a lot, that he's because he's a big guy at 6'5", 250. He's a big kid. To say that he's the most athletic, it's saying a lot in that regard. But then again, we don't have the most athletically gifted group of tight ends either. So it's not like Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis are on the roster and they're saying he's the most talented or most athletically gifted tight end. But it still means something to have the coach say that you're the most athletically gifted. So Marcus Ball is a guy that's going to get an opportunity, much like Logan Thomas. He's going to get an opportunity to show that he is capable at this level. He didn't get a great opportunity at Ohio State. He was an afterthought there. He has been an afterthought at this level. But yeah, as I've said before, you got to be talented to get an opportunity at Ohio State. You have to be talented to get an opportunity in this league. Let's see if he's able to make the most of this opportunity. He may not get this opportunity again. He may never be on a team that is this void of talent at the tight end position. We are starving for someone to step up at the tight end position. We might have the worst tight end group in the entire league. He may never be on a roster that is this wide open with an opportunity for you to seize it. He must take advantage of opportunities. Same can be said for Logan Thomas. Because next year, this tight end position could look vastly different. We could go out, get a guy in free agency that they really like, and draft another guy. And all of a sudden, a guy that was second on the depth chart at tight end last year is fourth or fifth next year and not on the football team. They got to take advantage of this opportunity. So we'll see what happens with Marcus Ball, but he's going to make this football team. That is for sure. Thank you for the super chat, Mr. Laughing My Head Off. See if we got any more super chats. Got another one here. This one is from Gally Sanford. Thank you for the super chat. As always, Gally Sanford. You always bless the program, always blessing the brand, and I thank you so much for your continued support. Greatly appreciate you, Gally Sanford, who writes, exhausted from trip, wanted to show support for family. Stay safe. Everyone wants our stuff. Thank you for blessing the program. Hopefully you're safe. Your trip was safe. I know you said you were going on a trip. I'm glad to hear that you're safe and you're back. Go ahead and get that recovery time, and I look forward to chopping it up with you in the future. And always know that somebody's looking at your stuff. I've always said this. It was funny when Ryan Grant became a free agent, and what was the dude named, the center that got a deal by the Jets? I can never remember his name. I always want to call him Winters, but he ended up in Buffalo. He ended up getting cut there. Now he's in San Francisco, I think. But it's, you always think that, oh man, our stuff is trash. Nobody wants it. We should be able to bring these guys back if we want it. And Jamison Crowder, even though we knew Crowder was going to get some, attention out on the market, he's a good football player. But, Ryan Grant, got a good deal from Baltimore until they reneged, But, I said all of that to say this. Somebody's always looking at your stuff. Always. You might think, nobody wants this guy. You'd be surprised. Like that's why, to me, Trey Quinn is going to make the football team. Because we may be thinking, oh, it's Trey Quinn. He's trash. He was Mr. Irrelevant. He's been irrelevant on this football team. Nobody wants Trey Quinn. Au contraire, my friend, go ahead and cut him and see if he clears waivers. See if you can sneak him onto the practice squad. You're not. There's enough tape out there on Trey Quinn that somebody's going to say, I like that dude, man. Let's get him here and see if he works better for us than he did in Washington. He just needs a fresh start. Somebody's always eyeballing your stuff. That's why this year, more so than in past years, it's imperative that you hold on to your veterans and you cut your young boys, because you're more likely than not going to be able to pass your young boys through waivers. You're not going to be able to get away with that with veterans. You got to hold on to your veterans. If you really believe in that veteran, you hold on to him and you sneak your young guy through waivers, And so we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into the roster. But thank you for the super chat and your support as always. Gally Sanford, really appreciate you. Got another super chat here from Carlton Pagano Jackson. Thank you for the super chat. CPJ, greatly appreciate you, Carlton, who writes, hey Lou, thanks for the love last week. My son definitely heard you and we got your merch. Keep it up. No doubt about that, man. Thank you for your support and purchasing the merch. And I can't begin to thank you for all the love that you guys have shown me, and you in particular. And, I really appreciate you guys. And anything I can do to continue to foster the relationship that we have, I'm all for it. So I really appreciate you, CPJ. Thank you for purchasing the merch and continuing to help power the Louie T Network, and look forward to chopping it up with you in the near future. Thanks again, Carlton. Got another super chat. This one is from JP. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, JP. Thank you for tripling up. No, a matter of fact, that's 4 for you, JP. You've been hot tonight, man. I really appreciate you, JP. As always, my man John Perez writes, I'm super concerned with Sadiq Charles barely taking part in camp. I would hate to see this kid completely flame out because he's the future at left tackle. He'll be fine. Now, here's the situation, and this is the beauty of the NFL, more so than any other sport. Because in the NBA, if somebody spends a first-round pick on you, and that's not what Sadiq Charles was, but there are only 2 rounds in the NBA. So if you get a guy in the second round, if you spend a draft pick on a guy, you want to see what you have. In the NFL, that's not always the case. This is the opportunity that Jaron Christian needed. And it had Sadiq Charles been healthy, maybe Sadiq Charles wins that battle and Jaron Christian never gets to fulfill his duty and obligation to this football team as a, third round pick. And maybe he never gets an opportunity here. And maybe he ends up playing really good ball for someone else. Or maybe he never gets quite the exposure that he needed to get in this league to get an opportunity, and he never becomes a starter. Whatever the case may be, the beauty of this league is that all it takes is for one guy to go down and for someone to get an opportunity. All it takes is for a guy to get that one opportunity, that door to be slightly ajar. For him to kick that door open and never look back. Tom Brady did it in 2000 when Drew Bledsoe got injured. He got that opportunity. He never looked back. And Jaron Christian may be in the same position here, where he may get this opportunity now, and he may never look back. And Sadiq Charles may never get a chance to play left tackle. That doesn't mean, though, he won't get a chance to play right tackle. Doesn't mean he won't get a chance to play right guard or left guard. It doesn't mean that he can't help in some way, shape, or form. But it may not be left tackle. It may be Jaron Christian's job moving forward. He might turn out to be one of the best things that happened to us this offseason, getting this opportunity. And we may bless Jaron Christian with a, 5-year, $78 million deal in the offseason, and he's our left tackle of the future. We might have found it. We might have unearthed that gem this year. And then all of a sudden, Sadiq Charles might be the heir apparent to the throne at the right tackle position, because Morgan Moses got a new deal like 2 years ago or so. So I think that was a 5-year deal or an extension that made it a 5-year deal. And so he's got to be going into year 3 or 4 of his deal. They may be getting to a point where they start looking at Morgan Moses. If that play doesn't continue to ascend or at least plateau where he's playing at a high level, if that thing starts to decline, maybe they're eyeballing Morgan Moses and saying, all right, Sadiq, we're going to give you a chance over there at right tackle. But that's not the situation right now. Morgan Moses is our right tackle. Left tackle is the position that we're all concerned about. Maybe Jaron Christian puts a stranglehold on it. Maybe he doesn't. And Sadiq gets healthy because from all accounts, the staff was really impressed with Sadiq's ability early before he got hurt, before they put the pads on. Sadiq was impressing them. So we'll see what happens. It's not like he's getting cut. He's not in danger of not making the football team. So that's not something that is going to take place. So he'll have time to figure it out. But once he gets healthy and his number is called, you hope that he's ready to perform. That'll be the thing that we have to look at. And yes, Spencer Long is his name. Thank you for that, John Carter. I appreciate that. So in any event, that's the final super chat that I see right now. That's going to allow us to now transition into our 53-man roster projection here on the Louie T Network. But before we do that, I want to first push this merch your way. This is just some of the items you can get on the website. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, there's a lot of merch that you don't see here available on the website. But go check out the Louie T Network website. Go check out the Print Champs. Those links are down below in the description. A lot of great merch, and as people have talked about tonight, it's great quality quality in terms of the merch. So I've received a few items myself, really pleased with the way the product has turned out, and I think you will be as well. So if you haven't had a chance, make sure you're checking out the merch. Shop it on the website. Shop it down below in the comments or the description. And, help support the Louie T Network. All right. If you get an opportunity, this is how you can definitely help support the Louie T Network. So, and also don't forget that we have the exclusive Washington election shirts, the Red Wolves shirts. I just got mine, so you're going to start seeing me wear that quite a bit on this program. So look forward to seeing me sporting a lot of black. It's not because I'm dressed in all black like the Omen. It's because I want to be able to bless the program with my merch. So look forward to seeing me wearing that shirt in the near future quite a bit. And I'm going to have other shirts that I'll be wearing on this program as well, so you can see me and see how it looks. So with that being said, let's get to the 53-man roster. And I want to explain a few things before we get into this. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to this. We're going to start with the offense, obviously. And the number at the top that you see, 17 out of 26, the number 17 is in gold. So gold is going to represent that player is perceived to be a lock in my eyes. All right. So the players that are in white are players that I don't think are a lock. The players that are in gold are players that I think are locks to make this football team. So on the offensive side of the football, I've got 26 out of the 53 men on this roster being on the offensive side of the football. And 17 of those 26 players, I believe, are locks. So there are a lot of positions that I think are available that aren't etched in stone on the offensive side of the football. So we'll see what happens. Let's start with the most obvious position on the offensive side of the football. That, of course, is the quarterback position. We're keeping 3 quarterbacks. All 3 of the quarterbacks are going to make the football team. I think right now, you're going to see a situation where Haskins is your starter. We know that to be the case. Rivera spoke and said that he's not going to give any indication as to who's going to be the backup, the number 2 guy, until game day on the 13th of September, which I think is a great move. But in any event, Kyle Allen is going to be your number 2 quarterback. He's the guy that knows the offense well. He's the one taking all of the snaps in camp. that Dwayne wasn't taking. And so for the most part, Kyle Allen's your 2 and Alex Smith is your 3. And I think they're going to just dress 2 quarterbacks on game day. I don't think Alex Smith is going to be an active participant on most game days, but we will see. But all 3 of these guys are making a football team. This is the easiest position to dissect. All 3 of these quarterbacks are making the football team. You then get to the running back position. I've been a staunch supporter of 5 running backs. I've been on this train the entire offseason. Listening to Ron Rivera talk, I haven't been dissuade in any way, shape, or form. I've looked at a bunch of 53-man roster projections. A lot of people are trimming the running back position down to 4. They either don't think Bryce Love is going to make the team and fear that he's going to be stashed away on IR because he's not fully healthy, or Peyton Barber's not going to make this team. Rivera has talked about every single one of these running backs at some point, and multiple times all 5 of these backs. Adrian Peterson definitely making his football team. That's not up for debate. Antonio Gibson, as a 3rd-round pick, definitely going to make this football team. They have big plans for him. Same can be said for J.D. McKissick. He was one of the first free agent signees that this team really got excited about, and he fits what Scott Turner wants to do offensively to a T. He's a guy that can catch it out of the backfield. As I mentioned, he's going to be the primary backup for Antonio Gibson. There is a place on this roster for J.D. McKissick. So those 3 are all locks to make the football team. Where things get a little murky at the running back position is then Peyton Barber and Bryce Love. I think both of these guys ultimately make the football team. But as I've mentioned, there is no current backup to Adrian Peterson as a 1st and 2nd down back. Maybe Antonio Gibson evolves into that, but I don't think he's there right now. I think Peyton Barber gives them what they would lack in not having Adrian Peterson available. And so Peyton Barber, to me, is that guy that makes the football team. And I'm just not buying all of the Bryce Love isn't going to make this football team talk. I don't believe it. He's one of those guys I don't think you can sneak through waivers and get onto the practice squad if you cut him. If you wanted to put him on IR and have him be on IR for the entire year and have him count against your cap and count against your roster, you could do that. And that's something that they could do without exposing him to the rest of the league. But I just don't think that Bryce Love is getting cut. If you cut Bryce Love, if you subject him to waivers, I don't think you get to see what Bryce Love could truly be. Because he's going to end up being swooped up by someone else, getting healthy, and we may regret that down the line. So I just anticipate Bryce Love being on this 53-man roster. I just don't see how you can part ways with him. Then you get to the next position, and it's the wide receivers. I think the first 4 are absolute locks. I don't think there's any real discussion there to be had. Terry McLaurin, Steven Sims Jr., Antonio Gandy Golden, the Gandy Man, Dontrell Inman, all locks to make this football team. And I don't think there's really any debate there to be had. Where the real discussion comes in at the wide receiver position is at the back end. Do you keep 5 or do you keep 6? I've seen a bunch of 53-man roster projections with 5. I've seen a bunch with 6. I was initially on the 5 train. I'm now convinced that they're going to go with 6 wide receivers. And so I've said all along that Cam Sims has earned the right to be on this roster. You could easily make him a lock here, but I'm not going to do that because of how the back end of this roster is going to be. He could easily not make this football team. I just don't see how, with the body of work he's put in this camp, how he would be able to be left off of this roster. So I think Cam Sims makes this football team. But then the thing that gets really interesting, I've seen people think that Isaiah Wright is a lock on this football team. A guy like J.P. Finley has Isaiah Wright as a lock. I just don't see how you can have Isaiah Wright as a lock on this football team, even though he's reportedly a core special teamer and a guy that they really like. Rivera talked about Isaiah Wright not really having all of the experience that they were looking for, and that he really was hurt by not having OTAs and minis. And he said, he's one of the guys that really was truly hurt by not having, all of the extra exposure that he would have had to the coaching staff and all of the extra reps he would have gotten. That was somewhat of a little bit of a precursor to what I think is going to be him getting cut and stashed away on the practice squad. But I'll take it a step further. I've talked about this already, so you guys know where I'm going with this. But you can get Isaiah Wright onto the practice squad. Like, you don't have to keep him on your 53-man roster. He wasn't drafted. No one knows what Isaiah Wright is out here doing. And furthermore, there's no film on Isaiah Wright in the NFL. So you don't have to fight with anybody. No one's coming and taking Isaiah Wright away from you. So if you're going to keep a sixth receiver, it doesn't have to be Isaiah Wright. He can be on your practice squad, and if you need to pull him up, he will be available for you to do that. And then I'll take it another step further. When you look at this group of receivers, look at it closely. Steven Sims is the only true slot receiver here. Terry McLaurin isn't a real slot. Antonio Gandy-Golden, Dontrell Emmett, and Cam Sims are all bigger-bodied receivers. You need another guy that kind of mirrors what Steven Sims Jr. gives you in the slot, a smaller jitterbug type of receiver. If you I will say this, they've talked about Isaiah Wright working in the slot and that he's done some good things there as well, but he's also a bigger guy. When I look at Trey Quinn, to me, he has that veteran experience Rivera covets. He also plays every special teams. And he's a guy that can back up Steven Sims Jr. and give them that little slot jitterbug that I don't think anybody else provides them with on the roster. Therefore, I got Trey Quinn making this football team. He may not make it, but that's the way I look at this. Trey Quinn, to me, wouldn't be able to be snuck onto the practice squad. You'd lose Trey Quinn when you could still keep Trey Quinn if you want him, and still have Isaiah Wright at your disposal because he'll be able to be stashed away on the practice squad. It just makes too much sense. Trey Quinn, to me, is the guy that ultimately makes the roster at the wide receiver position. As we move forward to the next position, it's the tight end position. This one is pretty simple. Rivera has only talked about 3 tight ends this entire camp. Now, I want to give you some names to watch at every position that I believe there are names to watch. I've given you the one name to watch at the receiver position. That's Isaiah Wright. If Quinn doesn't make it, Isaiah Wright will. If they only keep 5, neither one of those guys make it, and then Trey Quinn also becomes a name to watch as a guy that they try to get onto the practice squad. I just don't see that happening. But when you get to the tight end position, this one's pretty cut and dry. I have every 53-man roster projection I've looked at has the same 3 guys, and it's really because Rivera hasn't talked about anybody else other than these 3 guys. It's been Logan Thomas, it's been Marcus Ball, it's been Jeremy Sprinkle. Logan Thomas is the only guy that I'm 100% sure is going to be on this roster. I think Marcus Ball feels pretty safe. He feels like a guy that could have easily been a lock for me, but I'm not comfortable locking up Marcus Ball, but he's going to make this football team. Sprinkle is the one guy that if they were going to go in a different direction, he'd be the guy that would be in the most trouble. And the 2 names that you would look out for at the tight end position, the 2 names to watch would be Richard Rodgers, who they signed as a free agent, that's had experience around the league, multiple stops, including Green Bay, and Hale Hinches. And remember, Richard Rodgers' father is actually on the coaching staff. So that's an interesting dynamic there as well. I don't think that's going to have any impact on him making this football team or not, but I digress. Hale Hinches is a guy that we saw some good things from at the end of the season, but from an athletic standpoint, I think he pales in comparison to all 3 of these guys that we're looking at in Logan Thomas, Marcus Ball, and Jeremy Sprinkle, and I think that right there is probably what's going to keep Hale Hinches from making this football team. But Rivera talked about all 3 of these tight ends individually. He said, look, Logan Thomas is the guy that we think has the chance to be the most complete of the group. We think his upside is through the roof. Marcus Ball is the best athlete of the group, and Jeremy Sprinkle is the best blocker. He's the biggest guy. Jeremy Sprinkle, don't forget, is 6'5", 265 pounds. He's the biggest tight end that we have on the roster, and it's not even close. He's close to 270 pounds. So Sprinkle is a big guy, and they like that size, that girth that he provides. So I think Sprinkle is your 3rd tight end as we get to the last position group on the offensive side of the football. It's the offensive line, and Rivera made it abundantly clear that they're going to keep quite a few offensive linemen. I think that they're ultimately going to keep 9. There's a question as to whether the 9 consists of 5 tackles and 4 interior offensive linemen, or do you go 4 tackles and 5 interior offensive linemen? I think you go with the latter. 4 tackles, 5 interior offensive linemen. I could honestly say if I get one wrong on the offensive side of the football, I think it's going to be here at the tackle position. I think Wes Schweitzer could be on the outside looking in, and they could ultimately decide to go with an extra tackle because of Sadiq Charles and his injury situation. Just not knowing how he's going to be for the start of the season, it may force them to hold on to a guy like Cornelius Lucas, who's a name to watch at this particular position. But I don't think that if they're confident in Sadiq Charles being ready for the start of the season, I think you go with David Sharp and Sadiq Charles as your backup tackles, and Jaron Christian, Morgan Moses. As you can see, 6 guys are locks to make this football team. I've got the starting 5 in there: Jaron Christian, Wes Martin, Chase Roulier, Brandon Sheriff, and Morgan Moses. All locks to make this football team. Then you throw in Sadiq Charles as a 4th-round pick. He's not going anywhere despite not playing in camp this entire camp process, not being able to put on the pads and his helmet. However, he's not going anywhere. Too much potential, too much upside. He's making his football team. But when you get to, Wes Schweitzer, David Sharp, who they just acquired, I'm assuming they acquired David Sharp for a reason. They're not going to cut him. So he's as good as on this roster. I probably could have made him a lock, but I decided not to. But he's pretty safe. Keith Ishmael is a guy that is shown as a later round draft pick that he can provide them with depth at multiple positions. His versatility, I think, has landed him on this roster. The opportunity that he got with Wes Schweitzer being down for much of camp really helped solidify his spot on the roster as a guy that can play all 3 interior offensive line spots, not just center. So Keith Ishmael has earned his way onto this roster. Wes Schweitzer is a guy that came back towards the end of training camp, and I really think that they look at Wes Schweitzer and say, look, we know what we're getting out of him. He's a veteran. And Rivera said in one of his pressers that Wes Schweitzer is a veteran, and veterans are going to get the benefit of the doubt in a situation where they haven't played a bunch during camp versus a young guy that is out that hasn't played a bunch. And so I think you're going to see a situation here where Wes Schweitzer ends up still making this football team despite not participating in much of camp. And I think they go with 4 tackles, 5 interior offensive linemen. They could easily switch this up, add in Cornelius Lucas, and take away Wes Schweitzer. But I think they're going to ultimately go with Wes Schweitzer and not Cornelius Lucas. Lucas and Ross Pierce-Baker are the 2 guys that I have as names to watch along the offensive line. Pierce-Baker is a guy that's definitely going to be on the practice squad. I think another guy that they're also going to put on the practice squad is Timon Paris. That's another guy that I think they want to continue to take a look at. So I think they're going to have a bunch of and Rivera said, we're going to have a bunch of players between the active roster and the practice squad along the offensive line. So expect them to go heavy offensive line, which means they're keeping 9. Whether I've got the right 9 or not, I've got at least 7 out of the at least 8 out of the 9 right. But whether they keep Wes Schweitzer or add a 10th offensive lineman, which I just don't see happening. But I've got at least 8 out of the 9 right. Keith Ishmael and David Sharp are going to be on this team. Wes Schweitzer is the one guy that ultimately could find himself on the outside looking in as we proceed now. So that's the offense. As you can see, 17 guys out of the 26 are locks to make this football team. Really, you could up that total to probably around 19 because I think Marcus Ball and David Sharp are going to make this football team. But for the sake of this argument, I'm just going to say that those guys are questionable still questions to be answered, and so those guys aren't locks. But that's what I perceive to be the offensive side of the football, and that's my rationale and my thought process as I've dissected the offensive side of the football. We now go over to the defensive side of the football, and as you can see, I've got 24 players. Obviously, you could do the math. If I had 26 guys making the football team from the offensive side, that only left 24 roster spots for the defense because you still need 3 spots for your specialists. So 24 defensive players, 21 of them I have as locks. So the defense is a lot more fixed and a lot more settled. We feel a lot more confident on the defensive side of the football, and we have a much stronger idea of what the team is looking to accomplish on the defensive side of the football than we do the offensive side. So let's take a look at why we're so confident on this side. And it starts with the defensive line. I've got 8 here on the defensive line, 4 edge rushers, 4 interior defensive linemen. I don't think this is really much of a debate with these 8. You could add a 9th guy in here, and there are 2 in particular. We'll talk about them here in a second, but I want to run down this list of guys that we know are making this football team. Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, and Montez Sweat are the 4 guys that I perceive to be the starters on this football team, and I think when we get to week 1 versus Philadelphia, those are the guys that are probably going to start the game. But you're going to see a lot of the other 4 guys as well. Ryan Kerrigan, Matt Ioannidis, Ryan Anderson, and Tim Settle. All 8 of these guys are no-brainers to make this football team. Now you look at the names to watch. James Smith-Williams is a 7th-round draft pick out of NC State that they really like, and that's a guy to watch, as well as edge rusher Jordan Brailford, who was drafted a couple of years ago out of Oklahoma State. They like his get-off, and they like his ability to win off the edge. James Smith-Williams has the advantage on the special team side of things. And so those are 2 names to look out for. It would not shock me if one of those guys made it 9 along the defensive line and made this football team as we get to the next position, which is linebacker. These linebackers are really interesting. I think we've got the most talent we've had at the linebacker position in quite some time. More diversity for sure along this group. Cole Holcomb, Thomas Davis Sr., Kevin Pierre-Louis, Sean Dion Hamilton, and John Bostic are all locks to make this roster. 5 guys that we know are going to make this team for sure, but they're going to carry at least 6 linebackers. Obviously, you notice the omission of one Reuben Foster. He's a name to watch with this group here, because I think if they had their way, they would release Reuben Foster. No one claims him on waivers. They stick him on IR, on the practice squad, and they allow him to continue to heal. And they come back and they do this thing again next year with him on a 1-year deal, something along those lines. But we'll see what happens. I don't have him making this football team, however. I think, and look, it wouldn't shock me if Reuben Foster makes this team and they put Khaleke Hudson on the practice squad, because they should be able to sneak Khaleke Hudson onto the practice squad. That being said, Reuben Foster is a guy that I don't think they feel like they're going to have to fight over. I don't think they think he's going to get picked up. I don't think that he's a guy that's shown anything in camp enough to where they feel like they have to keep him on the 53-man roster. He's been running with the 3s, as I've told you, and I told you this last week when we went inside the pictures. He hasn't been getting a lot of run with the 2s or the 1s for that matter. So I think Reuben Foster isn't going to make this football team. I think a lot of people are thinking of Reuben Foster when he was healthy. They're thinking of Reuben Foster when he was coming out of Alabama. That's not the Reuben Foster that's performing right now. So I think he's going to be on the outside looking in. He's the only linebacker at this position that is a name to watch. He could easily be on this football team. I'm not counting him out, but I don't have him making my final 53-man roster. You get to the next position. It's the cornerback position. And I think they're going to keep 6 cornerbacks on this football team. They've really been impressed with some of the guys on the back end of this roster that have provided them with some depth. Obviously, you've got Five guys that I think are locks: Kendall Fuller, Ronald Darby, Fabian Moreau, and Jimmy Moreland are all locks. Greg Stroman is kind of bordering for me as a lock, but I think his performance in camp has put him in a position where it's hard to ignore what he's done over the last week and a half. He's led the team in interceptions. I think they like his ball skills. They like his ability. I think Greg Stroman is on this football team. And then I think I heard the DB's coach specifically single out Aaron Colvin as a veteran that they really like. And I've heard Ron Rivera himself go out of his way to mention Aaron Colvin and his veteran presence and his impact on that room. Because of that, Colvin is a guy that can also step in, play some nickel, but a guy that they're really comfortable with as a veteran in what is a really young room of cornerbacks. I think they like Aaron Colvin's veteran presence, and so I think Aaron Colvin makes this football team. As we then get to the safety position, and this one is pretty cut and dry for me. Now, let's go back to the cornerbacks for a second. There are three cornerbacks that are names to watch that not going to make this football team. I wouldn't count them out necessarily. Like a Danny Johnson could easily make the football team over Aaron Colvin. But I think that there are three names to watch at the cornerback position. You've got Simeon Thomas, who's a 6'3" corner with length that they love, and they want to continue to watch his growth and development. I think he's on the practice squad. Ryan Lewis is a second-year man out of Pitt that they think has some upside. Wouldn't shock me if he ended up on the practice squad. And Danny Johnson is a guy that made the team last year that is very interesting to this group. And I think they want to see more of Danny Johnson. Again, he wouldn't shock me if he made the football team, but I think he's going to ultimately end up on the practice squad. Now you get to the safeties. Three of these guys are locks. Landon Collins, Troy Apke, DeShazer Everett, all locks to make this football team, if you ask me. Sean Davis is a guy who signed a one-year prove-it deal to come in and potentially start. He's not going to start. Haven't heard a ton about him in camp, but that doesn't mean that they don't like him as depth on this roster. I think he makes this football team, but also make sure you keep tabs on rookie Cameron Curl as a name to watch. If they decide to go five safeties, Cameron Curl could easily make this football team. But they could go four safeties and decide that Cameron Curl has done enough to make this football team. I'll tell you this. They can get him onto the practice squad, but all it takes is one team out there that liked Cameron Curl as a 7th-round pick, and they could poach him. I don't know if Sean Davis is on the chopping block or not. I don't think he is. I think they want that depth and that veteran presence of a Sean Davis on the football team. But do not discount Cameron Curl potentially making this football team. He's got a shot. I'm not going to discount him, but I do not have him making, again, in this unique year where there are plenty of opportunities to sneak young players onto the practice squad because teams haven't been able to see them in the preseason. I think Cameron Curl is a guy that they'll feel pretty good about sneaking on to the practice squad and getting him some more experience there. But I got a curveball for you guys that I'm going to throw at you. Here it comes. So I had Stroman as a lock to make this roster. I changed my mind. I went back and forth on this about 15 times before settling in on what I ultimately deemed to be a curveball. I got Aaron Colvin as a lock, as a veteran that they really like. And I think that he's going to make this football team. Rivera, in one of his recent pressers, went out of his way to talk about the cornerback position, and he named five guys. He didn't have to name five guys, but he specifically named five guys. And a lot of times when Rivera speaks, and I've told you this from the jump, Rivera is a very transparent guy. He tells you what he feels, and he's sort of disclosing how he feels about some of these players on his football team as he speaks. And I'm going to tell you right now, he went out of his way and he mentioned five guys. He mentioned Fuller, Darby, Moreau, Moreland, and Colvin. He did not mention Greg Stroman. Now, they may appreciate what Greg Stroman has done in camp, but I think they look at Stroman and they think that this is a guy that they could potentially sneak onto the practice squad. And in a pinch, if they need to, they can pull him up. But the guy that I think ultimately takes his spot on the roster is James Smith-Williams. And I remember telling you this. Remember I told you that Rivera said that he's going to sit down with Nate Kazar, our special teams coordinator, and he said, I'm going to have him make a list of guys that he thinks are, important, and he's going to have him rank them in order of importance as to how they can impact the roster. And I'm going to have him give me that list, and I'm going to take that into consideration when we get to the back end of the roster, because I don't want to leave Nate high and dry. That's what he said about the special teams side of things. James Smith-Williams is a guy that when you listen to people like Nick Sundberg talk, and I listened to Sundberg talk the other day on a podcast, on the Washington Talk podcast, and he said, I'm going to tell you right now, James Smith-Williams is super smart, which we all knew that. Remember, we talked about how smart this guy was coming in as a draft pick. But he said this guy is a physical freak. And that's one of the things that this coaching staff became enamored with when they worked him out at the Senior Bowl. That's when they first fell in love with James Smith-Williams, at the Senior Bowl. They saw his size, they saw his athleticism, and they said this is a guy that if he's available late in the draft, we're going to take. And he was, and they took him. Not a lot of production at NC State, but this is a guy that they think has a chance to be a standout on special teams. So check this out. Nick Sundberg said this guy is a physical freak, and Nate Kazar is going to have some fun with him on special teams as a core special teamer. Nick Sundberg knows a lot about special teams. He's a core special teamer himself. He's seen a lot of guys come through the building. He knows what a guy on special team is supposed to look like, and he thinks that James Smith-Williams is it, and he thinks that Nate Kazar wants James Smith-Williams on the football team. I'm just going to tell you right now, James Smith-Williams has a real legitimate shot at making this football team because of what he can provide on special teams. And Rivera has talked about how important special teams will be making this football team. So there's my curveball as we wrap this thing up with the last position, and that's the specialists. You got your three specials. Tressway as the punter, Dustin Hopkins as your place kicker, and Nick Sundberg as your long snapper. That's not going to change. And so that puts you at a grand total of 26 players on offense, 24 players on defense, 3 players on specials for a grand total of 53 guys. So there you have it. That is my 53-man roster. I feel really good about that semblance of talent there. I think they're going to be looking at some positions. And, if we could go back for a second to a couple of positions. And I want to go back to tight end because someone had asked a question earlier, and I want to elaborate on it. So when you look at the tight end position, and we can have all of the positions up so you can see everybody on offense. The reason that I have 2 tight ends not in gold and I have those guys as players that aren't locks is because I could easily see a situation at tight end where the team likes a couple of players that have been released by other teams at the tight end position in particular, and it comes at the expense of a Sprinkle or Marcus Ball. I could easily see that happening. I think Ball is a lot safer than Jeremy Sprinkle, but what if the Browns, in a surprise move, release David Njoku? It's not happening. Trust me, that's not happening. But obviously, he'd have to clear waivers by Cincinnati. Cincinnati would probably snatch him up first. But let's just go with the crazy premise that he's not snatched up by Cincinnati. We'd put in a waiver claim for him, and he'd be a Washington football team member. And Marcus Ball or Sprinkle or a guy like that would easily be off the roster just like that. And to a lesser degree, there will be other tight ends around the league. To me, one of the positions in the league where it's easy to unearth a gem off of another team is tight end. I mean, every year I look at the Kansas City Chiefs roster and I say, they got 3 or 4 dudes that would be starting on our team. Their third tight end would be starting on our team. Their fourth tight end would be no less than a second tight end on our team. The 49ers have at least 3 tight ends that would be starting on our team. And so when I look at other teams around the league, they can't all keep their tight ends. Some good football players are going to be released at the tight end position. I think you could see a Jeremy Sprinkle, a Marcus Ball. I think those are guys that could easily be, moved on from, initially make the 53-man roster. Other teams cut players, and then they find 2 or 3 players that they like, and they bring those guys in, and all of a sudden Marcus Ball is on your practice squad, Jeremy Sprinkle on your practice squad. So that's a position that I think they're looking at. And same with the offensive line. I wouldn't be shocked if they go looking through the scrap heap and find something that they like there as well. I think on the defensive side, though, I think they're pretty content with what they have. I don't expect them to really be looking around, but linebacker is an intriguing position there. I could see them looking at the linebacker position if someone has a surprise release or a player that they really liked in college football 2 years ago or last year, and they get cut. I could see Kyle Smith, coercing Ron Rivera and company to pull the trigger on a guy similar to David Sharp. That was Kyle Smith pretty much coming to Ron Rivera and saying, hey, look, this is a guy that, I got a positive report on. Watched him last year. He got a few starts last year. The back end of the season, thought he played well and showed well in those opportunities. And so this is a guy that I think can come in and help us. And Vegas is kind of down on him. I think we can get him for relatively cheap. And so they did. They pulled the trigger. So wouldn't be shocked there. Let's go ahead. I got a super chat, so I will go ahead and attack that one really quickly. And then we'll get to Coach Speak and then get out of here. I got another super chat. This one is from Matthew Stansberry, my resident Colts fan. Thank you so much, Matthew. It's been a while since we've chopped it up, though, but always enjoy talking to you and other Colts fans. I really like Colts fans. You guys are really pleasant to talk to. But Matthew writes, good stuff, man. Colts fan here. I love Gandy Golden. Wanted the Colts to pick him up. You guys will like Inman. He's solid. Keep up the good work. I appreciate that. And you have a lot of experience with Inman. He was in Indy. I talked about how well he played for you guys that year. Andrew Luck took you guys to the divisional round. Inman was a good piece for you guys. I think he's going to be a solid pickup, as you mentioned. Thank you for that super chat, Matthew Stansberry. And good luck to your Colts this year. I'm anxious to see what they do with Phillip Rivers this season. And you guys have a lot of talent on that football team. You just have to stay healthy. That's always been the biggest issue in Indianapolis, especially on the offensive side of the football. So let's get to Coach Speak quickly. I just want to talk about Ron Rivera and what he had to say. I think, like I said, I didn't get to finish digesting Jack Del Rio and some of the other guys that spoke recently, but I'll get to that. And if something pertinent is said, I may do a separate video on that. But Rivera particularly talked about this roster. He had a number of things he wanted to talk about, or he did talk about. There were some really good questions asked of him that prompted some really good responses. The one that stuck out to me the most was about the roster. He also talked about analytics. I'll get to that in a second. But he talked about the roster and how different it is this year and how the process is different, because he says, look, he walked over to a few coaches the other day as they were doing walkthroughs, and he said, man, there are going to be a couple of guys that would actually have a legitimate shot at making this team that probably should make this football team, and in a normal year would make this team if there was a preseason, that aren't going to make this football team. And he said that really sucks because, he said, just think about it this year or this time last year. Steven Sims was an unknown commodity out of Kansas as an undrafted rookie. All right, he was a priority free agent that was here on this football team out of Kansas, and nobody knew about him. And we had no idea what this guy could be. He lights it up in the preseason. We fall in love with him as a football player. He makes the football team. Now he is a fixture on this team. Can't imagine the wide receiver core without Steven Sims Jr. Can you? And Rivera brought that up. And that's, to me, a great, and I talked about that before. That's a great example of how the preseason can make or break a guy and give a guy an opportunity that ultimately wouldn't have had one if not for that exposure during the preseason. And we may be missing out on a gem or two that we could have unearthed had we had preseason games. And he said it's a little bit different this year because you're more inclined to go with the veteran over the young guy because there is a track record. There is tape and film. There is something that you can go off of. There's something you can sink your teeth into as a coaching staff that say, hey, this is what we know this guy can provide. Whereas with a young guy, you're not quite sure. And there's that added piece and benefit of knowing, hey, we probably can sneak this guy onto the practice squad because nobody else knows what this guy is capable of either unless they're going off of college tape. But again, a lot of times guys are late round draft picks or they're undrafted for a reason. So you should be able to sneak your stuff because teams are usually more concerned about sneaking their stuff onto the practice squad than going out and poaching your stuff away to stash on their practice squad. So, and players have that option. Remember, if you clear waivers and you come back to a team, you have the right to go elsewhere. But why would you go elsewhere when you're already comfortable with that team? You spent all offseason with that team and you know what they have and you have a more direct path to becoming an active member of that team. So, Rivera talked about that aspect of it being a little different this year. He also talked about analytics. This was a fascinating conversation because, he talked about analytics and how, numbers. I'm not a big analytics guy, but I understand the value of analytics. But he said, look, analytics, it's essentially, it's a human game, and you have to be able to take analytics with a grain of salt. The information is great to have. You'd like to have that data, but at the same time, when you're in a game, they may say, hey, 74% of the time teams convert on 4th and 1 around this area of the field. You're better off going for it here than kicking a field goal or punting the football. Rivera said, there are times where, the analytics say 9 out of 10 teams convert here on this particular down and distance if you go for it on 4th down. He said, but what if you're the one team that doesn't? What if you're that 1 out of 10? You got to have a feel for the game. You don't know. Analytics may tell you that 36% chance or a hit rate to perform a fake punt at this particular portion of the field at this juncture of the game. You shouldn't do it. It's a low conversion proposition right now. But you feel the tide of the game changing, and Rivera talked about how the momentum has swung, and your team is on the ropes, and you're only up 3, and if the other team is 7 minutes left in the game, and if the other team gets the football, they've scored 14 unanswered points, and you feel your team on the ropes, and you need to do something to turn the tide back in your favor, and maybe a 4th and 3 fake punt is the way to do that. Analytics may say no, don't do that, but you got to feel for your team and where they are right now. You may feel like this is the right thing in the moment. And he's saying, and he had this line where he says, figures lie and liars figure. And so, essentially what he's saying is you can make numbers. And this is why I'm not an analytics guy. I've always long thought that you can make numbers support any theory or any argument that you have. That's why when people get into arguments and they start throwing out numbers, you lose me. That's when I shut down on you or I'm done talking to you. When it's just strictly based off of numbers, the information that you're coming at me with, your argument is strictly based off of numbers, I'm going to kill you every time. Because numbers can be skewed and they can be slanted to fit an argument or a narrative that you may have. And so that's essentially what Rivera was saying is that, figures can lie, and liars can figure. You can make numbers dance. That's what I call it, making the numbers dance. You can make numbers dance and appear whatever way you want. If there's an argument or a narrative that you're trying to push, you can make the numbers fit that narrative if you want. So I thought that was another interesting piece. He talked about the tight end position, and he said, look, I don't know if we have a complete tight end on this football team. He said, in Carolina, I had Greg Olsen, complete tight end. He said, here in Washington, you had Vernon Davis. He retired. He was a guy that we looked at as a complete tight end. He said, Logan Thomas might be a complete tight end, but we got to see it first. He's a guy that we're excited about. Remember, Rivera went through his whole spiel like he always does. Remember, This is a guy that used to be a quarterback, so he's still learning, yada, yada, yada. We'll see. But, it still speaks to them not being 100% content, nor should they be, at the tight end position. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised that if a team out there made a cut that interests this team at the tight end position, that this team didn't necessarily swoop in and grab a guy or two at the tight end position to bring in and potentially compete on this roster. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that shakes out. Rivera talked about Haskins earning the right to be the starting quarterback and how he learned a lot from his time in Carolina when, Rod Chudzinski and some of those guys, Mike Shula, were in the infant stages of grooming Cam Newton and getting him to become what he ultimately became in this league. And he said that he's learned a lot throughout that process, and he's seeing a lot of that stuff unfold. And he thinks that Ken Zampese and Scott Turner have done a fantastic job with Haskins in the way that Rod Chudzinski and Mike Shula had done with Cam Newton some, 9-10 years ago when he was a rookie and Rivera was first starting out as a head coach in this league. So he sees a lot of similarities there. He said, the biggest difference is just Cam was just a big guy, just a different guy. Dwayne is still filling out his frame, a different guy. Dwayne literally had to strip it down to then build it back up. Dwayne might bulk up next offseason and be a bigger quarterback, but he needed to strip down all of the excess weight, get rid of that, and then he can bulk up and get physically stronger, and maybe that's something we'll see him do. He's like, Cam was ready right out of the packaging when he came in as a rookie, as a 240-pound quarterback. He was a big, strapping guy. So he's like, that's the biggest difference. But he's like, arm talent-wise, they're the same. Competitiveness, they're the same. They both want to win. And he says, I see a lot of the same leadership qualities with these guys. Like, they both can lead and be leaders of men. So he's excited about Dwayne, hoping that they can make beautiful music together the way that he and Cam Newton did in Carolina for many, many years to come. So this is it's an exciting time. We're getting closer to the season. Obviously, I'll have a video for you when the 53-man roster cuts have been made. But I'm looking forward to seeing how this whole thing plays itself out. And I'm going to wait a little while after the cuts are made because the cuts may come down slowly. They may come down all at once at 4 o'clock. I want to see if any transactions are made by the team on the waiver wire. That's what's going to be really interesting. So I'll allow that to kind of settle a bit. I may have some things that, some surprising cuts that I may talk about with other teams, maybe some guys that we need to be taking a look at. But at the end of the day, you'll see this face again before the weekend is out at some point, and we'll be talking about this roster, who made the team, how close I was with my roster projections, and then we can start turning our attention to Philadelphia week 1. It's going to be fun next week talking about the Eagles, talking about football, just having it be back. My goodness, it seems like we've been deprived of something we all love. Normally, we would have been watching some college football by now. We would have seen preseason games. We would have already gotten something to kind of quell our fix. We've got nothing. So we are jonesing at this point. So next week, it's going to be a ton of fun when they kick it off Thursday night, Chiefs hosting the Houston Texans. And then Sunday, we'll get our boys kicking off the 2020 season, taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. They're vulnerable. I'm going to just say this, and then we'll get out of here. The Eagles are vulnerable. They're banged up. They are all kinds of banged up. They have got questions all over the place. We are catching them at the right time. If we cannot beat the Eagles in week 1, I am going to be vehemently disappointed. There aren't many games that I think we should win this season. And they're not. And remember, I've already guaranteed this game. And I had long thought that we were going to win before these injuries took effect. Remember, when I gave you my prediction for the schedule back when the schedule was released back in April or May or whatever it was, I said we were winning week 1 for Ron Rivera. All right, so that hasn't changed. Now I'm upping the ante because I see all of these injuries, and I see their left tackle go down, and I see their wide receiver position being ravaged by injury, and I look at Carson Wentz, and he's already banged up, and I say, why can't we take advantage of this Eagles team that is wounded and ready to be plucked? I mean, just pluck off a few feathers and put them in the souvenir cabinet. I think we got an opportunity to go get these boys week 1. I think that's essentially what needs to be done. And so we're going to talk about that all next week. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about the Eagles and the situation that is in front of us, because I think we've got a great opportunity to take advantage of a team that is, really staggering into the season health-wise. I think we need to take advantage of it while we can. So I got a super chat that will take us on out of here. And that super chat is from James Dean. Thank you for the super chat, James Dean. Greatly appreciate you. James Dean writes, I'm dropping $250 for us to win the NFC. 2 of our Super Bowls have been won in weird years, so I'm hoping for this one. Party on me if we go. Oh, yeah. You're getting great odds. If you're talking about dropping that $250 in Vegas, that's a great bet. We are the longest odds, along with like Cincinnati and Jacksonville, to win the Super Bowl. So you'd make a hell of a lot of money on a $250 bet. And those are long shot odds if we win the Super Bowl this year. You're right. Well, we've won the Super Bowl in 87. That was a strike shortened season. And in 82, that was another weird season. But guess what? This isn't Joe Gibbs. This isn't that group. I wouldn't think that that's what's happening here. Those were teams that were ready to win in those 2 seasons. That's not what's happening here. So I don't see it happening. But bless you for that $250. And if you win, I'm holding you to that, though. Party on you if you win, and you'll have plenty to go around. That is for sure. But hey, I appreciate you, James Dean, and I love your optimism, my brother. Good luck with that. You're going to need it. On that note, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not, I repeat, not the best NFL coverage it could be. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. Thank you for chopping it up with me. And make sure that if you haven't already done so, check out the merch. Again, link is down in the description below. Also, make sure you like the video. I see a lot of you have liked the video, but 300 of you are watching this video. I should have 300 likes. So if you haven't already hit that like button, make sure you mash that on the way out. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done that as well. I don't understand why you wouldn't have done it at this point, but go ahead and do that. And then turn on the notification and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing as we're about to ramp up our coverage of the Washington football team, but not just this team, but every team in the National Football League as the season is about to get underway. Bart Scott! Can't wait. I am a Washington football fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Washington spirit will never die. Washington spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, we're getting so close. We're 1 week away. Hail to our beloved Washington football team. Until next time, you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm your man, Louie T. I'm gliding to the side. You guys stay safe. 53-man rosters drop. The cuts have been made. I will be back. If something transpires before then, maybe a surprise move by this team or somebody else, and you want to know if we're interested, maybe you'll see this face all up in your space. But until then, you guys enjoy. Take care. Have a good one.